wrestling or jiu-jitsu is just a continuum of action.
Mm-hmm.
So be less focused on techniques and more so on just continuing to move and figuring out the next piece and the next position you want to get to.
Now it's live.
Awesome. So, Jordan, I was actually thinking about something.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, we were talking about how we've had our names messed up in
Yep.
in sporting events. And I was curious, when you got your last name messed up, they called him Jordan Lannister.
Well,
Was that during Game of Thrones?
No, they didn't say Lannister. It was
okay.
Lassiter.
Lassiter.
They threw an I in
Okay,
there.
okay.
Lassiter?
Yeah,
Lassiter.
my
They threw an
name
I
is
in.
my last name is Laster, so it's like the simplest thing to say. But people always just throw an I in there,
That's
only at
ridiculous.
wrestling tournaments.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you say that because Jill always makes fun of me that one time somebody was calling me at a jiu-jitsu tournament, and it was like, Levy Van Strappen.
Strap in, buddy.
I was like, what the heck did you find an R to decide to throw in there?
Strappin'.
I'm like, stabbing I can see, but like,
It sounds like
And
the end of a
strap.
Harry Potter spell.
Levy Van Strappen.
That's so good.
I wonder what would be the effect of that one.
Oh,
But that's weird to
awesome.
find. Like, why do they find random letters suddenly? In
I
your
thought I
name?
had this figured out too.
Well, what'd you have? Did you have something messed up?
Yeah, it was a dumb one. I won a race and I was really pumped about it, and they were like Matt
Say my
Bergman or Bergman or something like that, and it was like, come on, because I'm like Jordan, I got like the simplest last name. It's literally how it sounds, Bartman, Bartman.
At least mispronounce it as Batman.
Yeah.
Just say Batman.
Throw the
Let's get
R
rid
out
of
at
R.
least. That
or
would be cool.
Hartman.
Cartman, yeah. Matt Cartman. Closer, I guess. But yeah, anyways, I thought I had that figured out with the Lannister. I was like, during Game of Thrones, boom,
Like, that
maybe
makes
somebody
sense.
figured that out.
There was one tournament where they called me Jordan Haster with an
Ooh.
H, and I was
All
like,
right,
where
all
did
right.
that come from?
Haster.
I actually went up and told them, like, oh, it's Laster.
Mm.
And then they continued to just still say Haster. So I was like, all right.
I could see like Leister, maybe.
Yeah.
Something, but
Wasn't there like a grappling event where they kept goofing up the names? And I'm trying to remember when it was. It was a big one too. It was like a WNO.
oh.
It wasn't long ago too.
So there was the infamous Pride announcer that she was at ADCC, like announcing all the names. But I'm not sure.
Some of those are tough.
I'm not sure if she was.
Giancarlo Badoni.
Yeah,
you
but
know?
I think maybe that's what was happening because she was announcing like 80 fighters. Like we were all there, and they just brought everybody out one at a time.
Hmm.
So we're all like, "Oh, this is cool." But after like the 20th person, we were like,
all right.
"Oh boy!" And then she's like screaming her voice, "And now, next fight!" And it's like it was fantastic, but it was like, yeah, drug on just a little bit.
It's
So.
like a graduation ceremony.
Oh, so
Oh,
much!
yeah.
Yeah, everyone wants to clap
Yeah,
for.
well, all right. Save your applause.
Save
till
your
the
applause,
end.
like,
Thank
no
God.
way.
You know what? Another piece of banter I had. Did you guys ever play World of Warcraft in its height?
I never did.
Neither
I did vanilla World
Yeah,
of Warcraft for
I was
just a little
saying,
bit.
That was like apparently the one to play, right?
Yeah.
Because it was before they like buffed it and whatnot.
The
and
problem I
changed it.
had with it was I found out that
Or
it's only super fun to
nerfed it.
play when you're doing with other people.
Yeah.
Like I found myself at midnight just roaming around backlands and then
Killing
just like
boars.
killing boars in the woods. And it just wasn't as fun. Like I obviously played an experience that's not super common, but it was like I wasn't part of like a guild or something like that. But I was like, oh, I can see why people got into it. But I knew a guy that logged, what was it? Some insane gameplay, like 365 days.
That's insane. He spent a year.
A year of gameplay
Oh, that's
inside
rough.
World of Warcraft. Like I remember he showed me like his screenshot of it, like a year.
I feel like I'd keep that to myself.
Yeah. So I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but
Oh,
actually,
hot take.
we do
Lay it
hot
out-
takes
we
all
do
the
hot
time.
takes all the
You have to
time.
label
Lay
it
it on
hot
us.
take and then you go for it.
And we should probably intro who you are.
yeah.
That's true. Why don't we start with that?
But no, do the hot take first.
Yes.
Be spicy.
All right. So hot take. I actually hate PC games.
Mm.
I don't mean
That's a hot take
I
right
don't mean
there.
politically correct. I mean like desktop games.
Oh, okay.
So I grew up like loving Halo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A bunch of shooters.
Mhm.
Sonic, Kingdom Hearts.
There you go.
I'm really big into like RPGs and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Solid.
for some reason, I just cannot. And it's always on consoles. So like the PS3, PS2,
Yeah.
Xbox, whatever.
Mhm.
But I have some friends who are big PC gamers, and I just cannot get into it.
No.
Whatever the reason. I think it might be just my setup, honestly.
Sure.
I just never invested in like the proper equipment.
You know, there's something weird with this.
Yeah.
This feels better.
Exactly.
You know?
I mean, now with like, was it Steam?
Yeah.
I remember a long time ago in high school, my buddy figured out how to connect like Xbox controllers
Oh, yeah.
to his laptop so he could
Cool.
play games on there. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, maybe if I started when it was like this.
But
I
only
coulda
thing
done
is,
that.
you'll still be a step behind because, like,
Yeah.
for first-person shooters and stuff, the mouse is so fast.
Right.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm actually in a similar boat. I couldn't get into.
Yeah.
I tried WoW, and I
Yeah.
was like, I didn't have any friends to play with too. Maybe I would have liked it then.
Yeah.
But, it seemed like a cool idea, but yeah, console gaming the whole time.
Yeah.
Plus, I work on my computer, so it's kind
true.
of nice to be like, get out of here, that computer. Give me
Right.
the Xbox. I know they're also a computer, but like, give me that computer. I want to play on the Xbox or the
Well, and
PlayStation.
the tough part with computers too is that you have to constantly be upgrading it too. Like if you don't have enough RAM, or you have to keep upgrading your video card and things like that. I'm saying as games get bigger and bigger and more intense, like I think it's like Starfield that just came out. It's
yeah,
like,
I've been playing that.
it's just like, oh my gosh, like you have to have the most up to date,
Yeah.
experience on your computer in order to play.
I totally
versus
went out
like,
and just bought the biggest Xbox I could find.
did you?
Yeah, it's like, I'm gonna buy.
I'm not taking any chances.
Yeah. But
I've
anyways,
not played too much of Starfield lately. I've just been getting crazy into Baldur's Gate 3. That just has, taken over me for sure.
I'm gonna need to scoot over here. By the way.
Which I don't like because then I get guys like Matt who go, "Why have you finished My Hero Academia yet? Why have you finished Cowboy Bebop yet? Why have you finished?" I'm like,
I mean, great questions.
it is great questions. So I had like 8 episodes in last night of Cowboy Bebop. But
Good. We'll talk about that later.
yeah, it's just like,
All right.
find time.
So instead of just talking at our guests, we should probably have our guests introduce themselves.
Yeah. let's go
So,
for it.
Jordan, how's it going?
It's going great. I guess I can say a few words.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah. So my name's Jordan Laster. I'm
Not Haster.
not
Not
Haster.
Haster.
Jordan Lassiter.
Laster.
Grew up in Illinois.
Mm.
Moved to Wisconsin recently, so I'm now a Wisconsinite.
Yeah.
Gladly.
Born.
We're Wisconsinites, right? That's
Yeah.
I think that's the wording.
Yeah, we're pretty loose on
Wisconsiners?
it. We're pretty
No.
relaxed about
Wisconsin or
it.
Wisconsin.
Wisconsinites.
It's a
I
very
think we're good.
welcoming state.
It's been great. I wrestled for about half my life, all the way through college at Princeton University on the D1 level, and then now I'm a blue belt in jiu-jitsu and training here out of Theory.
So I have some questions for you in your
So
wrestling background,
also
too.
on top of that,
Yeah.
that Jordan is our main or lead or head coach for our wrestling program.
Yeah,
so
it's a legit
he's
program.
it's absolutely fantastic. I've always been wanting to do something as far as having a separate wrestling class, but with my jiu-jitsu background, it was not going to take the cut. And then the universe just aligned with Jordan coming here, so it was perfect.
So Jordan, how did you get into wrestling?
Yeah, great question. So I probably played every sport you can think of before wrestling. So
Water polo?
not
Every single one,
yeah, I didn't do fencing, squash, or water polo.
or
Okay.
the field Quidditch.
Yeah.
you see that?
Cricket?
You run
I didn't even
around.
know what those sports were until I got to college, and I was like, huh. So
Oh,
my
sure.
best friends actually are now water polo players. So that
That's
was
awesome.
cool to learn about. But I learned at an early age that I actually did gymnastics, which I didn't know about. But I guess that explains like how I knew how to somersault and stuff just
Oh, sure.
since day one.
Solid,
Since
yeah.
since I had consciousness,
Yeah.
6-year-old consciousness, I guess. But I think I started in t-ball. I
Okay.
played basketball, did karate, and karate was kind of my first venture into contact sports.
Okay.
And I did that for a few years. I got up to like brown belt level. And while I was doing karate, I also did like track, cross country, and I was always big into like endurance sports because
Yeah.
I always thought I had a natural inclination to push myself more than most people,
Okay.
even if like my asthma was really bad when I was a kid. So you'd hear me wheezing while I'm like running cross country. It sounds like I'm going to die, but I was actually fine. And
Do you still have asthma?
I kind of outgrew it.
Outgrew it? Okay.
Yeah. So I haven't had
If
really
you said
had
yes, that was called BS.
I
I'd
would
be like,
hate that.
BS.
He's running on 40% the whole time. What the heck?
my power level is over 9,000.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I assumed. My first form.
But I was doing all these sports, and then actually in 6th grade during cross country season, my science teacher, he was the head wrestling coach, and he's like, "Oh, I heard on the announcements you're doing pretty well in cross country."
Nice.
And some of my best friends, even to this day, were going out for wrestling. I was also a huge WWE fan,
Okay.
so I had like the stadiums and like the figures.
Yeah.
And
That's
I'd
cool.
bring them to like school, and we all mess around with them.
Oh,
And
those are the best.
make up like games to see which action figure won for the day or whatever.
That's
It was
cool.
ridiculous. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with that. So I always like kind of liked wrestling, but it was always the fake wrestling,
Yeah.
and I was kind of scared of the real wrestling. But my best friends got into it. They were like, "Come on, man!" My science teacher kept poking and prodding me, and also that kind of came full circle. But that's a story for later. And I went out for the team, made varsity. I think like 3 weeks of training.
Nice.
Beat the guy who was starting before me. Not that the bar was super high at our school, because wrestling wasn't like big at the time in my hometown, but now it's gotten kind of big. And yeah, started from there, got my butt whooped the whole first year, but really liked it and liked how everything's kind of on you, you know? I played a lot of team sports and like love team sports, but there's just nothing better than like completely having control of the situation.
Oh, I agree with that so much. That was kind of my main motivation with karate, because I first started with basketball, and then basketball kind of led into more like if you were really good, you got to play.
Okay.
You know, so I'd go out for like, 2 or 3 seconds and then like drop the ball or whatever, and then it's like, all right, Vince Strappin, you're out. Let
me do you one better.
Yeah.
So so when I played basketball, it was for a year. And in practice, I was like, all right, I can make shots and stuff.
Sure.
But for whatever reason, whenever we went out to actually like compete, I would miss every single layup, every single shot until the championship game. I made a free throw to take us to overtime, and then we won.
Whoa.
So I made 1 point
One
the whole
shot.
season.
That's all it counts,
when
man.
it counted, yeah.
I think I started almost every second of the season and made the one shot that was a free throw.
That's so amazing.
That's awesome.
And then we won the championship. So
since we're telling dumb basketball stories, I have a good one
Oh,
too.
you got one too?
Yeah,
Okay.
so when I was a kid, I played a little bit of basketball.
Sure.
And I remember I played a little bit, and then I just kind of tried something else, and then when I was like maybe early teens, I was going to circle back around to it. And my friend was playing basketball, so I was like, oh, okay, I'll try it again. And I remember telling my mom, I was like, I played basketball when I was like 8, right? And then she's like, yeah. I was like, I was really good at it. And my mom is like totally like the most like relaxed person you'll ever meet. And she's usually just like, okay, hun. But she was like, Matt, you were terrible at it. You were so bad at basketball. And then she was like, you were trying to like box the guy out, like you were in his face and wouldn't get out of his face. Like even like when it wasn't the time to be boxing him out, you were boxing this poor kid out.
It's so bad.
Yeah, I was terrible at basketball. So I feel you. I feel you.
So we're all bad at basketball.
Yeah.
So we all just go to
Sounds like
grappling.
Jordan has the best basketball skills out of all of us.
Yeah.
Hey,
He
I
had
just
the
made it when it
championship
mattered.
one.
Okay, keep going. Keep going. So yeah, you're playing lots of different sports.
Play a lot of different sports, started wrestling, and then what I realized is I just loved contact sports, so karate and wrestling were the two I kind of stuck with.
Cool.
I had to give up baseball and all that because there's just no time when you're doing karate and wrestling.
Makes sense.
So then I'd say about summer of 7th grade, I got super into wrestling to
Okay.
where I was actually going to training outside of the season.
How'd you find that?
Yeah, I mean, thank the Lord for my mom, because
Yeah.
all I said was, I need to get better at this. And like sometimes before tournaments, I'd come home and like try moves with my mom, and she's just like, man, I don't want to be doing this. So she found a program nearby,
Okay.
and actually a lot of really good dudes came out of this program. It was a kids
Nice.
club called Romeoville Wrestling Club.
Okay.
Actually, it might have been the Spartans. I don't know. It's been a while. But I actually had some awesome partners there. Multiple guys from out of there became All-Americans in college.
Whoa.
So we had like a really good club there. So
Isn't it
kinda
crazy how serendipitous that works sometimes?
Yeah.
Like, when you hear about people who've achieved pretty high levels in sports, they're like, yeah, I liked shot put. And then little did I know, the guy
Yeah.
down the road was an Olympic shot put dude. You
Yeah.
know? And then you're like, oh, cool. And then,
That works really well.
like hard work combined with the right training partners
Yep.
and whatnot, good things happen.
Yeah, so I started training there, and that whole summer I was like, oh my goodness, wrestling is so much harder than I thought. These guys were just kicking my butt left and right. And it was awesome though, because I got so much better so quickly. I got to a point where these guys were whooping me, and then by the end of the summer, it was like very competitive.
Nice.
And then the next year I started being able to beat some of these guys.
Ooh.
So I started getting way better because I just had to rise to the level of the room,
Yeah, makes sense.
which was great. But also on the back burner, I was still in karate, and I was actually a brown belt, and I was a test away from my black belt. So I was like, what am I going to do here? Like, I have two sports that I both really like. But I could tell I was more serious about wrestling, and it was like a greater puzzle for me to solve than karate was. So I eventually gave up karate because I also had to give a certain number of practices to karate. And after
Yeah.
a hard wrestling practice, there's no way I'm going to karate after.
Yeah, I know.
I tried it a few times, but it just not manageable.
Jordan, you're looking a little tired over there.
He went for a double leg suddenly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, also, what kind of rubbed me the wrong way too was I went to karate and was like, oh, I'm wrestling on the side and stuff. They're like, wrestling, like,
Oh,
you
yeah,
need to
that's
just
right.
like we would kick wrestlers' butts. And after all the wrestling stuff, I'm like,
I don't think.
I don't think so. I think if I could just wrestle in here, I
Yeah.
might win like most of my fights.
Yeah.
So,
So I don't think I've ever asked you this, but did you get your black belt in karate?
no, I never
you
did.
didn't? Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't put in enough time to do it,
Mhm.
and it was something I always kind of thought I wanted to go back and do. But honestly, so it was Shotokan karate,
Mhm.
which is like a lot of art forms. There's
yeah.
kumite, which is sparring,
Mhm.
and the more I got into wrestling, the less I cared.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't really care to get that black belt anymore.
Matt, did you?
Actually, funny enough, I stopped at my brown stripe belt with all my stripes on the belt. I was one test away from black, and I
Yep.
stopped.
That's exactly what I had.
Yep. Yeah, mine was for a
That's
different
funny.
reason.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I went all the way, got 3rd-degree black belt. So I took both
went
your black
deep.
belts and I layered it on.
Yeah.
But that was like, my main thing. I just kept going with karate. But it's funny enough. I ran into Gracie Jiu-Jitsu like 2 years into karate, so I got like hooked on it, and I was watching it kind of on the side until eventually it just kept seeping into my brain deeper and deeper and deeper.
Then you
I'm
realize grappling's legit.
yeah. Once I was doing like a kumite or sparring, like I caught a guy's roundhouse kick and just brought him to the floor and started getting on top of him, and yeah, he was freaking out. I'm like, I know this is good stuff now. I just got to keep going with it. But yeah, so that's amazing, kind of how deep the puzzle of contact sports can get, or especially with grappling and stuff. Like that's why I thought it was amazing too. Like you have some good stand-up striking, but it's like grappling, just especially when you're contesting against somebody else. I mean, just striking too, which is fine, but it's like, man, that's something different.
So I would say like striking's legit,
Yeah,
but it's just most places don't practice legit striking.
that's a
and,
good way of
Right.
and
putting
there's
it.
a huge cost, to your health for that, right? That like there's a very
Like a
real
Muay
cost.
Thai camp or something like
Yeah,
that.
like because you're going to be taking headshots and stuff, so like good strikers are very. It's obviously anything that's in MMA and stays in MMA is worth doing,
Mm-hmm.
and striking is in there, but it's probably not the karate we were doing at the strip mall.
I think there was a
you know?
podcast. There was a podcast with Kurt Angle. He was recently on Joe Rogan. He was talking about how, like, what's going to be the long-term effects of MMA fighters, like with head kicks and shots and things like that too. And I'm like, I'm not too sure. I mean, we probably will see it over time, but I mean, so do you feel like there's predominant injuries when it comes to wrestling? Do you know like a lot of wrestlers have certain kinds of injuries or?
Yeah, I would say the most common injuries I see are usually like ACL tears,
Oh.
LCL tears,
Yeah.
meniscus.
Do you think the shoes have a lot to do with that since you can plant and twist?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'd say that probably contributes to it. I don't know if it's like a significant contributor or not. I have a buddy on my team who tore his ACL on both legs twice.
Oh,
Just horrible luck. And then afterwards, like we're just walking somewhere and sometimes his knees will buckle. One of my best friends, really good dude, and it's just tough to see that, in the sport because he's really good. And there's just so many wrestlers' careers who've been derailed because of that sort of stuff. But then you have guys like Spencer Lee. I don't know if you guys have heard of him. 3-time Iowa Hawkeye national champ.
okay.
I think he took 6th this past year. He got upset. And then actually our Princeton guy won that bracket.
Oh,
Ah,
So
that's
that-
nice. That's
Shout out
awesome.
Pat Glory. But he actually tore his ACL, I believe, a year or two ago.
Okay.
And he still won nationals.
Dang.
Torn ACL.
Wait, with a torn ACL?
Yeah.
Oh,
There are
geez.
some guys who are just freaks and do that. There's another example I can't think of off the top of my head recently who also did that. But you can still win even
Mhm.
like that. It's just you got to kind of suck it up. And it's not ideal, but, that's just a sport.
Well,
but I will
think-
say...
Go-
oh, go
keep
ahead.
going. I'll say the infamous story of Kurt Angle
Yeah.
winning like, championship with a broken neck.
Oh, yeah.
Insane.
Yeah. Like things like that. Like it just, you can't match the intensity and the focus of like
The
a
dedication.
dedicated wrestler. Like they just keep going.
Yeah, I will say though, just outside of jiu-jitsu and grappling, I'm super into like health, and I wouldn't call myself a biohacker, but I do a lot of like experimental stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm not like supplements, but just like different diets and trying to figure out how I can optimize my health.
Mhm.
But also with that comes like exercises and mobility and things.
Yeah, you were talking about like your extreme range exercises you're doing.
Yeah, mostly like my whole philosophy now is I want to get stronger in longer ranges. So what that means is like if you do bench press, that's like a very short range where you're just like training that range. But if you go and you have to put the bar over your head and like down to the floor, bring it up and then bench, you're going to be
Yeah, it's
super
a
weak
huge
on the
range.
overhead part. So I'm trying to get stronger in just some of those longer ranges, full body. So training like with weights above my head while I'm going into the splits, like things like that.
Just watched a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie yesterday.
You watched another one?
Oh, dude, always.
I just watched Time Cop.
I was just watching
it the other day.
Bloodsport. But okay, tell me more about your Bloodsport training.
But what I was going to get into is there's this knees over toes guy. Have you heard of him?
Yeah.
Actually,
he's
his
good.
stuff has really helped me.
Yeah,
I've been doing it for years.
I've been doing a lot of that stuff too. And I think, honestly, with that, a lot of these sort of injuries will go down because most people aren't trained in that way where it's like, you know, instead of doing a lunge, like you kind of do a lunge, but your knee goes way over your toes.
Yeah.
And then you're strengthening some of those muscles a lot of us don't really strengthen. So I do think that's where a lot of these knee injuries come from, is just not giving a lot of attention to the smaller muscles in the legs that the knees over toes guy and a lot of his exercises and things address.
Do you ever... So like Dr. Kelly Starrett, he's got a lot of good stuff too.
He's really good, yeah.
Do you ever
Actually,
watch-
don't know who that is.
Oh God, yeah, he's awesome. Check him out. He had a book that came out probably like 10 or 15 years ago, or 10 or 12 years ago.
The Supple Leopard.
Yeah, becoming a supple leopard.
So
he was
good.
kind of the dude who like started the whole mobility craze,
Mhm.
and over time he's like developed and changed his kind of philosophy
I should
on it.
reread that.
And he's got a couple other books.
What's
But
his name again?
Kelly Starrett, Dr. Kelly
Starrett.
Starrett.
Okay.
He's awesome though. He works with a lot of like Olympians and
He's
stuff.
got another good book that was like sitting, like basically.
Yeah,
just,
he's the one who was like desk bound. That was the one.
Yeah,
Get
desk bound.
Ready to run.
Yeah.
And then actually, he's got a book that's more like general public health and stuff that I started reading. I can't remember
He's
the
an
name. but-
insane knowledge depth when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like intense personality too.
Yeah, he talks about like when you're at the end range of a like one of the reasons to do like different mobilizations is to like get your body used to being in that space and being kind of like, hey, it's safe, it's okay, and then building up the capacity in that space. And I thought that was just a really neat idea. And he also talks a lot about how like, you know, just like setting your joints up and whatnot. Like, I bet you, I'm just gonna speculate, but if we watched film on the guys before they had ACL tears, I'd be interested to see how many of them would collapse the inside of their foot and rely heavy on their knee, not actually like going over their toes.
Right.
Oh,
Right. Like,
Yeah.
so they
Yeah,
would have
shortcuts.
essentially a navicular drop, right? I think it's called, right? Navicular, because it's your navicular bone. But yeah, essentially your feet come in, knee come in, and I'd be curious, right? Because then it's not a good supporting structure, and you know,
Yeah, I would say one thing that was amazing about karate is before and after class, we always did stuff where it was like get into the splits and then you slowly have to go down. And we weren't using like weights and stuff, but we were basically training mobility all of karate, like every
Nice.
session.
Yep.
And that actually translated over to wrestling really well in jiu-jitsu now too, because in wrestling, to fend off some leg attacks, I would literally hit the splits. Like I have a
Nice.
picture of my Instagram of me in the splits defending a single leg.
That's
cool.
amazing.
And-
what a cool photo.
And there's actually this guy, Nico Megaludis, who was a Penn State national champ.
Sounds
and
like he's got a cool name.
I like that
Yeah.
last
good
name.
name.
Bet that does get mispronounced.
Yeah, Nico Mega
Mega
Man.
I want that.
He's like, I remember seeing him do this where he's hitting the splits and fending off single legs and guys just cannot take him down. And I remember after seeing that, I go, I can do that. And then I was never taught it, but I just saw him do it. And then I started doing it in matches and it just paid dividends.
So do you think that's a range, like the more flexible a wrestler can be, the more likely they could like get themselves out of bad spots?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You're going to put yourself in crazier looking positions, but if you're flexible, it's like, oh, my body can do this. Like, it's not as crazy as it looks. And also, you're less at risk of injury.
I can see that with like guard retention, right? Some crazy guard players like can be very flexible as far as like bringing their hip mobility back, and yeah, that makes sense.
Well, even like what's the name of the takedown? The one that you showed us where you grab the back of your head after you shelf the foot.
Oh, right.
So actually, I was thinking about this after I taught that, and I don't even know if I learned that anywhere.
Oh,
That might have just been something I kind
it
of...
seemed legit.
nice.
Okay, actually, no. Now I think about it even more. So there's this move called the treetop.
Okay.
And what it is instead of just holding a single leg up in your armpit,
Yeah.
you bring it up to your shoulder.
Okay.
But you don't do the... apologies for everyone listening. 'Cause you're not going to know what the heck we're talking about. But you can't put...
The photo op.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
with the treetop, you just hold the foot up in your shoulder.
Okay.
And then you just kind of run the guy down or like
Okay.
try to back trip. But the one I came up with was like, I can't hit the treetop on anyone when I get their leg up. So what I'm going to do is just really lock it in by putting my hand behind my head.
Solid.
And then while they're balancing and hopping, because I'm moving them forward, I'm going to put my foot behind them and bounce with them until they fall. So it's kind of just a variation I made up.
The tripping tree.
Yeah, the tripping tree.
I
That's
like
good.
it.
That's good.
I would say, but like flexibility there, like to bring it back to what we were just talking about, it seems like that'd be a prime scenario where that's probably really
like your hamstrings, right?
Yeah.
It's like being able to go all the way up like
versus
that.
if you're like super tight,
Yeah.
Right.
Or even when you do the Hadoken one, you know, like guys just goes. Did you see that one, Levi?
What was the Super Mario one?
The Shoryuken one where you like uppercut the leg.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. Have you seen that one?
I don't know. He showed
we can
showed
show
too
ya.
many characters because I remember there's one with those Mario one that you uppercutted.
Oh, it's the same thing.
It's the same thing. That's what I thought. I was like, he's like, let's go.
So, Levi,
Like, that got stuck in my head.
Wrestling practice.
I know.
We'll
I gotta
have to start showing you
I gotta
some
make
of
them
these.
more happen.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yes.
That'd be cool. Okay, so let's talk a little more about like the training, right? Because I did want to ask you about like what your training looks like now. Also, maybe if we have time, we may not have time today, but what your training looked like when you were in wrestling throughout middle school and high school and college, right?
Yep.
Like how did it change?
Mm-hmm.
You know, actually, for sake of a timeline, let's actually do that.
Yeah, so I can start at the beginning. So 6th grade when I first started wrestling, this is with my middle school. We had like 3 coaches, and I think a lot of our workouts started with like 30 minutes of running.
Wow.
We just ran all the time through like the hallways of the school. Looking back, I'm like, that was so dumb.
Yeah.
You gotta do something, right? You feel like there's some sort of strength and conditioning. Like, you
Yeah.
can't just do wrestling.
But
You gotta-
like, why were we starting
Yeah.
with that?
Plus, a match is in 30 minutes,
Right.
right? You have a very specific task you're training for.
yeah.
Right. And also we started doing that from the very beginning. So I didn't know any wrestling and we just started running. So I was like, is this the track team or is this the wrestling team? No, but it was good because I think on a positive note, it really got us in shape before the wrestling season. So I was in great shape just because of that, like, you know, level 2 heart rate cardio or whatever. Zone 2. There we go. And then from there, what we would do is we'd go in, it'd just be a lot of like technique sessions. And then after the first 2 weeks, it was more live wrestling. So actually learning how the rules worked.
That's cool that they like progressed you into it versus just being like, all right, kids, get after it, and then half the room's injured kind of thing.
Yep.
Okay.
And no, so it was a good ramp up period. I would say most of the time practices kind of look like, at least in middle school, it was just running first,
Yeah.
then technique, and then going live, unless it was just a technique day.
Okay.
And going live is just, you know, wrestling all out with your partners and switching. And
So how often was that ratio, the technique versus the live? Because I can see the similarities with jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
A little bit of practice, so I'm curious what that would look like.
it's been different as I walk through the different stages of my wrestling and like where I've gone and stuff. It kind of varies, but I would say in middle school, it was like we wrestled live every day, probably the last 20 minutes every day. And then most of the practice was spent doing technique and drills. But it kind of depends where you're at, you know?
Yeah.
So after middle school, when I started going to the off-season training in Romeoville, they were more intense. So it wasn't running at the start. It was a lot of like high-paced drills.
Okay.
Cool. A lot of like chain wrestling. So that's when if you can't get one move, then you go on to the next move based on your opponent's reactions.
I could see that being so helpful because then you're like positioning yourself to be able to keep attacking versus like, oh, you missed your single leg.
Exactly. I think middle school was more about, and all this actually was in middle school, but I think the format I got exposed to was more high level outside of my middle school practices. So middle school was more like, oh, here's the technique. Now go wrestle live. Whereas the Romeoville practices, where I was getting my extra training, were basically like, here's the concept. We'll show you the technique for like a few minutes, but now go apply the concept. So if the technique doesn't work here, what are you going to do after that? And your whole goal was like, I'm going to take this guy down with a single leg, but how am I going to get to the single leg?
Sure.
So it was more concept based, and that's where I improved big time. Because then it's like sometimes even when I teach wrestling, sometimes I get a little lost in like the technique of the move and the details.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
And I think it's important right now because we just started the program for people just to understand what wrestling is.
Yeah.
But I think over time I want it to be more concept based. So you just have to get to the takedown from the single leg. How are you going to get to the single leg?
Yeah.
So people can kind of figure it out themselves, you know? Because once you figure it out yourself, it's really going to click.
Oh, so much.
So I think that was a huge change at the off-season training I did. And once I started thinking that way, like I just got techniques very quickly.
Nice.
Because I wasn't lost in the technique. I was more lost in the concepts.
Well, so
Yeah.
you're manifesting the concept of the technique.
Exactly.
So all this has the same crossover with, you know, our current grappling training, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's kind of tough because in the beginning, it's like you may be able to catch someone with the idea of the concept, but I think it works easier just to show a technique and then to tell people or put things together. Like, because I was talking with Lewis the other night because I showed him the video of me grappling Chris the other day and saying like, I'm not like doing set techniques in set spots. Like I'm not like, I'm in side control, so I'm going to do this technique like that armbar I caught. Like Chris was pushing my head away and it just, because of the extension there was the armbar. It was not like, I'm not sitting here going like, I have to do a set technique in these set spots. Like it's more concepts, but in the beginning, it's kind of like, it's tough to like tell people, hey, when there's an arm there, just swing for the armbar. And it's like, if you don't know the movement pattern,
Right.
if you don't know like kind of the very set technique, like I should say movement pattern, it's hard to manifest it in the moment when the concept's there.
Yeah, I would say on that note too, I've been very thankful that you've let me coach wrestling here because I feel like for the last 4 years, I kind of took a hiatus from like combat sports and all that, and I wasn't super involved. So I kind of felt like I lost a bit of my edge as to like some of the technical sides of things.
Mhm.
But you know, it's like riding a bike; it comes back quick.
Yeah.
So since I've been able to coach here, it's been great to kind of sharpen my mind and remember some of these techniques.
Mhm.
Not only just to teach them, but like so I can sharpen my own stuff again.
Yeah.
But I found, and I've really been thinking about a lot lately, is just like it's so much harder to teach someone who's new to the sport than it is to just come in and like have people who already kind of know stuff.
I would say on that argument that it's difficult because where do you find that in wrestling ever? Like elementary school,
Yeah.
right? Or something like that. Like,
or middle school.
yeah, or something like, yeah, like someone like how often, let's say, do you have a brand new wrestler in high school? You know, like
yeah.
probably pretty low percent of the time versus someone stepping into high school right away and going like, hey, I want to learn wrestling. Like, what would that room look like for that coach to be like, okay, we're going to jump you in right away to do, you know, drills or techniques. Like, you know, it looks a little different, but like versus like someone brand new to grappling here as an adult, or sorry, grappling, I guess, a jiu-jitsu or wrestling. It's like, yeah, you kind of have to find interesting ways to like show and demonstrate things while having other people too in the room.
So actually, funny enough, I coached a high school in New York City when I was living out there. This was in 2019, and we just started the program. And every single kid I had, except for one who I was training, doing private sessions with on the side, was new to wrestling.
Oh,
every single kid.
Interesting.
We started with nine kids, so 8 of them did not know wrestling at all.
Okay.
And actually, my best friend, he and I were the coaches for the
Nice.
school. We were also roommates, so I was like, dude, you want to come coach with me? He's like, yeah.
Let's do it. Cool. That's so cool though.
And it was cool that work kind of allowed that flexibility too, because we'd have to go coach at like 3 p.m. So it's like,
yeah,
maybe
makes
I
sense.
start working a little
Absolutely.
earlier so
Yeah.
I can go.
That's cool that like that's an important note for businesses. And I think like you're like, because you're giving back at that point too,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
like making sure that the company goes, you know what, like we'll make it work. Like,
Yeah.
You know, this
That's
is
awesome.
an important thing for the next generation of that activity, you know?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
I was super grateful for that. And so I would go to these high school practices and I'm leading them and running through warm-ups and everything. And here I have the kid who I was teaching like privately, who's like leaps and bounds ahead of everyone. But then I have to teach 8 other kids what wrestling is.
So you had like
Yeah.
a white belts and then a one purple belt. Kind
Exactly.
Of thing?
So
Okay.
I'm like, oh man, like this is quite the conundrum. And I think I did a good job based on like what was there, and the kids got super into wrestling, and there's a lot of funny stories from that whole season.
Did you find a lot of people that were kind of, I shouldn't say dedicated into it, but a lot of them seemed pretty focused to wanting to learn?
I would say from the very beginning, a lot of them were kind of just messing around, like, and I wasn't trying to be like the super tough coach.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make sure they had fun, but there were some times where it was like, okay, I actually got to like
Yeah.
whip these kids into shape a little bit. And actually, I think I did it in a way where they understood that I was just looking out for them and wanted them to understand wrestling. And then actually what really motivated them was when we had our first few matches, they actually went out and were like, oh, I got my butt whooped because I wasn't, paying attention in practice.
Oh, I was going to
And
say competition. Like, you think they'd go out and then be just whipped and go, oh,
it was
I should
actually
listen.
insane how much competition helped them, because there are some kids who like get terrified of competition. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, I never want to do that again, quit the team. Actually, every single kid I was coaching was super hyped. Even when they got their butts whooped, they were
Yeah.
like, Coach, what could I have done differently?
Ah,
And then you
that's
could
cool.
see that attitude at practice. And it was like, it brought a ton of joy to my life at that time, because I was just like, this is so cool to see like kids getting really into something just because they lost
Yeah.
and they want to get better. Because
Yeah.
a lot of times, especially nowadays, I think you see people lose at things and it's like, whatever, it's not for me.
Yeah.
But it was cool to see them stick with it. And a lot of them started to improve big time. You could see the attitude change in the room. They were actually trying way harder in the conditioning
Nice.
and everything. So it was super cool to kind of see, young men and women just kind of find something's tough and stick with it and then want to get better. And then unfortunately the following year COVID hit and our program was canceled.
You, I think you did something really cool there, from like a parenting perspective. Sometimes you want to be like, do the thing I'm telling you to do because I know it's better for you and you should just do it. And most of the time you'll get compliance, but you won't get like their heart into it,
Yep.
But I think the way you handled that was like really, really intelligent in that, like, one, let's make it fun. Two, I thought it was really neat how you're like, all right, let's see how this goes, and then like just let the results speak for themselves, and then everybody goes, man, we got our butt kicked, and it's like, yeah, because you guys aren't doing what I told you to do.
Can I go off on a small
Please
tangent?
do.
Please
Okay,
do it.
so our very first, we're going into our very first competition, and the way this one worked was there were 4 other schools there, so each of our kids was going to get a chance to wrestle people from the opposing teams
Cool.
at their weight class.
That's awesome.
So it's going to be like 3-4 matches. So our very first
How long are they?
matches in high school are 6 minutes.
6 minutes. Okay.
Our very first match, the whole team's hyped. Like,
Yeah,
I was
let's
like,
do this.
wow, these guys are messing around in the room, but they're so hyped for competition. I was like, I don't even know if I ever got this hyped for my team for competition. I'm like, these guys are awesome. Our team was awesome. Shout out Churchill. But our very first guy goes out, and I think he's wrestling another first-year wrestler, which is always like the most dangerous thing, because you have 2 guys who are
White belt versus white belt.
exactly,
Ooh,
and, a little
yeah.
spazzy just because you don't know
Yep.
how to wrestle. So our guy gets up, the whole team's cheering him on, and he gets mat returned. So that's when a guy stands up, the guy's behind him, lifts him and brings him down.
Oh, sure.
His elbow, the way he landed, he like hurt his elbow, and he kind of screamed out. And at first I was like, that didn't look good, but it looks like he might be all right. He might have just hurt himself a little bit. As we're walking out, his elbow was just like completely, I don't know if it was dislocated, but you could see it
Oh,
was
no.
very extended.
But did he go straight arm
he,
post?
He must have went straight arm post. I haven't seen a video of it after, but
Okay.
yeah, I felt awful for him. And that was the very first match of competition ever for our high school.
No. Dude, were you
rest
just
of the
like
guys.
sweating
Yeah.
after that happened? Like,
I was
oh,
like,
man,
not
oh,
only
no,
did I come
no,
out
no.
here like, I
Yeah.
know the kids are going to have a hard time because we haven't had a ton of practice before competition, but we're kind of just going to figure it out as we go. But then, really good kid who was working really hard. He was actually kind of bought in from the very beginning,
Okay.
hurt himself. And I was like, oh no, like this is going to kill the morale of the team. And on top of that, it took like 2.5 hours for paramedics or anyone to come get him. So he's on the mat.
No.
Stuck
They
in
didn't
his
have anybody
singlet.
there?
No.
Oh, man.
I think we had to get like a private service to come get him.
Oh,
Wow.
goodness.
And this was in the Bronx. So
Okay.
as you can imagine, traffic's crazy.
Sure.
Yeah.
So he gets injured. He was a warrior. He was a trooper. I felt horrible because some parents were like, is my son going to get hurt in the sport? And I was like, no, they should be all right. And then he gets hurt. And I was like, oh, this is not great. And then actually I lost my wallet that night too.
Oh,
Which
no.
was-
He makes it sound like that was the main one.
Yeah.
And then I lost my wallet.
man.
it was a tough day for
Dang.
Churchill wrestling.
Was that pretty much like the biggest injury though? Did everybody else
Yeah.
like do pretty well?
There were no injuries after that, but
Okay.
what was amazing, not amazing for our athlete, but amazing for the team in general, was everyone was really motivated because they were like, if our guy's out here and he went to battle and he's out here on the mat and, this is what's going on. And the whole gym actually stopped They canceled the entire like wrestling event
Really?
because they couldn't get him out of the room.
Oh no.
Whoa.
It was just craziness and just shows the inefficiencies of New York City traffic and
Yeah.
and everything. But I think our whole team really came around and they were all like there for our athlete. They were, you know, like, hey, you'll be fine, man. And it really kind of like woke him up and like put a fire in him, you know, it really motivated everyone. Like, we got to do this for our guy, you know. Like,
Did he end up, his elbow end up healing and whatnot?
yeah, his elbow ended up healing. He couldn't wrestle the rest of the season. He's actually now absolutely jacked.
That's awesome.
I will never break again.
Yeah.
I think he shot me a message on Instagram like, hey, man, I really loved wrestling. Might not be my parents' favorite sport now. But yeah,
Check how yoked I am.
Yeah, exactly.
he took that as motivation. Like,
That's cool.
Wow, like that should never happen. And then after wrestling, he's like, I'm just gonna go get jacked and like work really hard in this area.
Spend
So
some
now
time in the
he's
hyperbolic time chamber.
Exactly.
and when he was wrestling,
Never
he was
anymore.
like a scrawny, like strong, wiry kid.
Okay.
But then I think after that year and a half of healing and then hitting the gym, he
Yeah.
was more yoked. I'm not gonna say I'm yoked, but like he's bigger than me.
That's awesome.
So I was
dude.
like, jeez, like, he really took that and ran. You know,
That's cool.
So that was awesome, and it was just cool to see how our whole team responded to that. They were like, man, like we can't let our guy go down like that. Like we're gonna go and bring it to these. Next
it brings the
matches.
group together.
Yeah,
So
it was cool.
There's something there too with. You ever notice? I don't know. Did you guys ever like skateboard and stuff when you were younger?
I tried. I was really
not
bad
too
at
much.
it.
So I used to like skateboarding and rollerblading and stuff like that and doing like tricks.
Where'd you go do that?
Actually, Nina had
I'll
a
say
skate
Nina.
park,
I
like,
was gonna
right,
say
right
Nina,
by my house.
probably,
So
yeah.
I would just ride my bike there and skateboard
Okay.
or do my roll. I actually liked rollerblades the most. But you more likely got hurt when you were like hesitant. It was so weird. There's
Oh,
like,
I can
and
see
I
that.
think the same thing applies with a lot of stuff in life where like physical activities where when you're hesitant or you don't really know what you're getting into, you're more likely to get hurt. But
You
if
don't
you're just
commit
like,
to it.
I am going, like I am full send, either I'm getting this or dying. The funny thing is you actually tend to land it more. You know, like it's kind of weird.
I completely agree with that. And actually, in the college wrestling room, you're wrestling super high level guys every match. Every guy you wrestle is like a state champ or whatever.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we had a coach, Joe Dubuque, who's actually now Princeton's head coach. He always used to say knowledge is weakness because
What a great wrestling quote. I love it.
I mean,
I
half
get what he's
joking,
saying, yeah.
but he's basically saying like,
Stop overthinking it.
exactly, you guys are overthinking everything,
Totally.
which then so you're hesitating, and then also when you hesitate, not only are you less likely to like get moves that you go for,
Yeah.
or finish takedowns, but you're also getting yourself more tired because by thinking in a match and not just relying on your training, that mental component physically drains you.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You're getting stressed
That's a good
and-
point.
Yeah.
So much. I mean, it happened to me all the time if I just went into a match and was like thinking. But then my best matches were always where I came off the mat and I go, what happened? Like I kind of blacked out there, you know?
Yeah.
Like not
You're in the zone.
just in the zone,
yeah.
in the flow state, you know? Just
Yeah.
feeling great and just relying on your training and letting your body do its thing.
You know, I feel like that'd be a funny speech. All right, everyone, you're in the Princeton training room. You guys are at Princeton. You all know how to wrestle. Quit thinking about it.
I think Bruce Lee kind of said that in the beginning. He's like, you learn everything and then you forget what you know.
Isn't that like Shinha-ri? Isn't that what it's called? Like,
Oh, that sounds familiar.
I don't know, but that all sounded really cool.
It makes sense though, right? It makes sense like to go and say like
look it up.
you absorb everything, but then you have to let all that training just come through you. Like I had some really good rounds yesterday at Chris's place down in Chicago. But it's funny as you were talking about that, just like knowledge is weakness. Like I can't remember thinking that much when I was rolling with their crew yesterday. Like they had some really top level guys, and it was just like them rolling Chris, and I'm like, I gotta get this on point because I was filming it for Roy. But it was like he made a compliment to me afterwards. He was like, "You were so relaxed where it meant to be relaxed, and you were so tight where it was meant to be tight." But it was funny. Like I was just feeling out the opportunities, but I wasn't sitting here like, here's this tactic, here's this technique. Like I wasn't thinking too much.
Right.
But the crazy part on top of that was I wasn't that tired. Like I was getting a sweat on, but I didn't feel anywhere near like exhausted or tired. Like I've been in some matches where I'm just like, wow, I'm in the bottom. I'm really pushing, trying to get out. And it's like, but just a lot of more like exploratory. And I think when I was more exploratory, I didn't have to think so much. I was just more curious how my body was going to react.
Right.
You know?
I would say, so I always used to kind of get in my head a little bit because this was my weakness. I always credited myself as being like the most conditioned, like best in shape. But the part where I got in my head was, I know I'm about to go so hard in this practice or match that I'm terrified of how tired I'm going to be because I'm going so hard.
Do you know that was
I feel the same way.
that's
like that.
Andrew Wiltse's main fear.
Getting tired?
He says getting tired. He's like, if I have like the worst fear in my entire life is being in an MMA match and having nothing left.
Or MMA?
Yeah, that's
You
what he
like
said.
MMA?
Yeah, I'm not sure if he like was looking towards an MMA
Oh,
type
okay.
match, but just the context of being having nothing left in the tank. Like that's a scary thing for a grappler to know like you have
Told
these
you
things,
guys.
but your body's like,
Told you Friday, man. 2 minutes. I got 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
I get 2 minutes out of my body.
That's all I got.
Well, but you know, then I kind of looked into like, what are ways I can deal with this? And for me, I always wrestled my best at the NCAA tournament, which is great because that's when you want to wrestle your best.
Yep.
But it was kind of like the pressure's off me now, so I'm less in my head because I've made it to the national tournament.
Oh, you're there.
Sometimes,
interesting.
Sometimes it's like there's a lot of pressure just to even make it there, especially my sophomore year when like I was starting to do really well and I was
You're
like
saying sophomore of high school?
of college.
College,
Yep,
okay.
sorry. So I was like, I got to make the NCAA tournament. That's where you become All-American if you're top 8 or win a national title.
So why weren't you stressed then? Being
Yeah, I think for me, at least that season, I just was like, I know I'm good enough to make it to this tournament, and I believe I can All-American there. And if I don't make it to this tournament, I'm going to be so let down by myself.
oh, interesting.
That
So
that
just getting there,
pressure,
yeah.
that pressure kind of made me. It manifested other thoughts before matches, like, what if I get too tired here and like I lose, and then like that's one more loss, and then I'm not going to make the tournament because there's this thing called RPI, which like helps you get spots into the national tournament.
Okay.
Based on how you finish in like your conference tournament and like your whole season
It's
record
like a
and stuff.
score?
Yeah, it's like some weird stat. It looks like wins, losses, all sorts of stuff.
Okay.
So was it kind of like once you got into like the NCAA tournament, was it just like you affirming to yourself like you are good enough to be here?
I think it was a little bit of that, but I was just like, I have to just make it to this tournament before I can even hit any of my goals. My
that's a
goal
good
was to
point.
All-American or win a national title, and I can't do either of those if I don't even make the tournament. So
Interesting.
I'm like,
Okay.
I had a ton of pressure on myself just to get there, and then I got there pretty easily my sophomore year. And then from there, I'm just like, I have like nothing to worry about. Like I'm at the
You're
tournament.
playing with house money at that point,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, my sophomore year, I was sick as a dog when I got to the national
Oh,
tournament.
no.
And I was cutting, like making weight was so hard. I made it exactly on both days. I
What
had
was
to
your
weigh in.
weight?
141.
Okay.
141 pounds. I was so sick, like super bad sore throat, and probably was strep or something. And just like without ibuprofen, I could not function. And then anytime we weren't practicing, I was in bed, just like almost hallucinating and just sweating from like the fevers I was in. And I actually wrestled phenomenally because I just went in there with, I don't care. I'm sick as a dog. I
And
can't
10
talk.
gallons of Sudafed in your body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, literally, I was just like, Shelby was our trainer at the time. I was like, oh, could I have some ibuprofen? Took that, felt great for 8 hours, wrestled my matches. Made it to the round of 12, which is like, if you win, it's called the blood round. Because if you lose, you're out the tournament. But if you win, you're an All-American.
Oh,
And I got
that's
my-
got to be like a heavy round. You know,
Yeah.
like,
It's like one of the
everybody-
most exciting rounds.
That's cool.
I got my butt whooped by the returning runner-up the year before.
Oh,
dang.
He got upset earlier on in the tournament.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a stud. But yeah, got my butt whooped. But it was an awesome tournament because I just really didn't care about anything. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna just go out here and just do my best, you know?
Do you think that part of it? So that tournament is towards the end of the season, right?
Yeah, it's the end of the season.
Okay.
Yep.
So do you think part of it too is by the time you reach that point at the end of the season, you've sharpened your game so much that you were essentially like just expressing it at that point? Do you think there was any aspect of that happening?
I think there's some of that. I think our coaches did a great job. Chris Ayers was our head coach at the time, and he's, I would like to say, more analytical than most coaches I've ever had. No,
Was
most.
he the one that was like the blood or the not blood pressure, the heart rate? monitor?
Yeah, he had us
Okay.
wear heart rate monitors my
Yeah,
senior year
that's
just
right.
to test that stuff out. He's very analytical, so he tried to use data to help us
Mm.
from years before when he coached, from just looking at other people, and he tried to implement that into like our preparation
Okay.
and our practices and things. So
That's cool.
I actually think he did a great job of my sophomore year, allowing us to taper off at the end of the season. So by the end of the season, you've
Yeah.
honed your techniques. Like you have all the tools you need to to do well. You're not going to get like significantly better in like a week before nationals. So
The hay is in the barn.
exactly. They said that all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
Bars.
That's funny.
You're all good to go.
So what it basically was is towards the end of the season, it's just, hey, come in, get what you need. We did some zone 2 cardio like once or twice a week just to make sure our conditioning was still good. And practices were short, like an hour.
Like to
Nothing
drop
too
fatigue.
intense. Yeah, and the few days before it was just more drilling and sparring,
Okay.
not like hard wrestling. And we'd have some match simulations where you throw on a singlet and you wrestle someone else on the team for a full match. But really shorter practices, you come in, get what you need. They really treat you like an adult. Like,
Good.
You can kind of do this, but here's the general agenda for the day. You know?
I like that. That sounds really cool. I have to jump back like a few minutes ago. I found what the shuhari is.
Oh, jeez.
You guys want to know it? Yeah, I thought you guys, you're
go
both
for it.
martial artists. You might like this. Okay. So first, shu is follow the rules.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh.
And that's the foundational phase where one learns and becomes proficient through instruction. Here you should try to achieve perfect technique, develop the correct body mechanics, and learn the curriculum. Next is ha, which is break the rules. The understanding phase is the one that breaks away from codified learning and adopts what is most suitable for oneself. Through enhanced understanding and attaining efficiency in movement, build your skill uniquely and practically. Discard what is of no need to you and keep what works for you. Developing your game, essentially, is what that is.
That's awesome.
And then the last one is re, which is make the rules. The mastery phase is one that transcends the codified learning of the martial art. Once you have adopted the martial art for your unique requirements and you are able to apply it and call upon it automatically, they use a different word there, but you can then create and add to your repertoire to build upon your martial art. You evolve and transcend as a martial artist. That's just how this one is written. But it's kind of a neat idea. So it's like foundational understanding and then mastery.
Yep.
It's like you learn how to do the technique.
Yeah.
You can recall the technique quite well. And at the end, there is no technique.
I think that's something similar that Haji Gracie had said, that like, in the beginning you learn like the 10 foundational techniques or whatever. And then he says, then you transcend to learning like hundreds of thousands of variations. And then you come back to the 10.
I think that's fair.
And it was just more of this idea of like, you are getting exposed to all the possibilities.
Yeah.
So you're getting exposed to saying like, this is what people can do. But kind of like Roy Dean had said not that long ago, like you kind of come back to more kind of this general concept. Like when you're grappling or you're wrestling, like I'm sure it's those things where it's like you're more or less following, going back to our previous conversation, like concepts and principles versus, or like I should say rules in a weird way. Like don't let, like you always say all the time, like don't grab my hands, don't grab my wrist, don't grab my ankles. Like it starts like summarizing more general things versus like, and then when you're actually capitalizing on a moment, then you're just running through the mechanisms of the technique. You know, like you're saying you have a really good single leg or double leg or whatever, but you're the opportunity hunting, you know, it's more intuitive at that point. Like I always like that with grappling. Like I think in the long stretch of things, like you just become a hunter. Like you're just getting really good at creating opportunities, seeking opportunities, and then capitalizing on it with really good technique.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't capitalize on it, then that's where you come back to the training room and go, okay, why didn't that arm lock work? Why didn't that takedown work?
Mm-hmm.
Because now you capitalized it, but it was weak.
Think about this with food.
Food.
When you're little, you try lots of foods.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
And then as you get older, you start to realize the foods you like.
Mm-hmm.
And you eat those foods more often.
Yeah.
And then every now and then, when you feel like it, you throw a new one in, see if you like it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it gets added to your normal, like the same 20 foods you eat all the time. Sometimes most of the time it doesn't. And I think probably most things run through that process, right?
Jordan, what's your favorite wrestling food?
Wrestling food.
Or sorry, like what's your favorite wrestling technique? I should say. What's something that you really enjoy doing?
I have a few favorites depending on the position.
Sure.
But I would say takedowns, probably the high crotch or the high C for short. It's just the easiest way for me to get to a leg because I'm really explosive when I go for that one. And from there, I have just a dozen finishes.
That's cool.
And I can always move them over to like, if I don't get the high C, they throw my head inside. There's single leg. You can switch off to doubles. Kind of opens up everything. But I think for jiu-jitsu, the high C is not necessarily the best one. So in jiu-jitsu, I'd probably say the double leg or sweep single.
That's cool.
I really like what you were showing on Friday.
Oh, the ankle picks.
That ankle pick setup
Yeah.
was solid.
Yeah,
showed
ankle
ankle
picks are
picks?
great.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's got a great setup too, Levi. It's so good.
Well, it doesn't matter because I was watching whatever one I was sending you the other day. Was it the Passover?
Oh, the
Or
Russian wrist snap.
The Russian wrist snap. Yeah, it was like ridiculous. Basically, just like winging people by like some sort of Steven Seagal move. Basically,
Ooh,
Believe it or
You do
not.
it from a chair and being overweight by like 100 pounds.
Yes. But it's like grabbing the guy's wrist and then you like go pick a far leg and they backstep and then you just wing the arm right past their body and they just like almost like judo toss.
I've actually tried it in here. But,
Oh, really? Okay.
But I don't get the reaction I need to actually do it. So
sure.
it just looks like I just like
They let you have the leg. It's
just like
oh,
whipped
there it
your
is.
wrist for no reason.
Oh, funny.
That's
Yeah.
funny. That's interesting.
Well, it's funny because I don't see too many of that. Like when he showed me wrestling clips, like some of them are very unique. Some of them are really high efficiency, but it's the same with jiu-jitsu. It's like you just always see like the weird one. Like I just sent it to Luke. Some guy showed a no-gi bow and arrow choke. Sorry, I
I'm
apologize.
skeptical.
No, this
I'm
is not
skeptical.
right. That's not
Okay,
true.
okay.
No-gi clock choke.
Oh, I forgot about the clock choke.
So clock choke from
I
like a
used-
turtle position, like reaching through. Like he had some weird
Kind of like a Darce
bicep Darce grip, and then he was walking towards the front of the head.
You know, sometimes there's such a pressure for people to try to come up with their own moves. I'll admit I'm a curmudgeon when it comes to names of moves because I'm like, that's just a Darce where you walk out, you know, or an anaconda. where
Okay,
you-
so
right,
this is where it gets deeper because people like John Danaher will say things like the Darce is like an inverted katagatame or something like that.
that's
like,
a lot of words though.
But I'm saying like he's saying it's this, but it's inverted.
Okay.
So he's not saying like it's a Darce. He's just saying like it's an inverted this or a seated katagatame or like it's the same arm setup,
Yeah.
but it's just like inverted versus we can say like anaconda or Darce or whatever.
You know, we should start calling stuff by whatever its name in English would be. Just because, you know, like it actually makes a lot of sense where like we were talking about how like ashi, right?
Yeah.
Right, and it was just means like leg or something, right? And so it'd be like outside
that's how the
leg
Japanese are
entanglement.
saying.
Yeah, they're just
Yeah.
literally saying like it's the outside leg entanglement, the outside leg trip.
Which is
You know,
hilarious
like-
because that's wrestling.
Yeah,
Ankle pick.
yeah.
Single leg.
See, I
double
like
leg.
that. I like that.
So-
That's nice. Versus being like, here's the Jap. Because
Yes.
to us, it's a name of a thing, but it's not just what it is,
Right.
right?
So Luke actually was teaching like headlock stuff,
Oh, yeah.
and I cannot remember the Japanese term for it.
Is it Kesagatame?
Yeah,
Yes.
he said that, and I said headlock.
What? Yeah.
I don't even know what it means.
Well-
What's queso?
Kesa.
That means cheese in Spanish.
Okay, so it's the
queso,
cheese lock position.
Queso lock.
We're definitely Wisconsinites with that.
Um,
But Kesagatame, and then there's like some other one. Like, I get the concept of it. Like, I think Juji and things like that. Like, just
scarf hold.
yeah, it's a scarf hold position. That's where it starts getting a whole other tangent where there's no like unified name for something.
Yep.
It's like so like with 411 saddle, inside Senkaku,
Honey
honey
hole.
hole. Like everyone kind of figured it out on their own and they all give it their own terminology. The one thing I do like though, as far as like a pedagogy thing or just teaching people, what I've loved with 10th Planet is the idea that they've come up with an extreme name for something. And although it's kind of like their humor and their personality, it makes things very easy to remember with the variety of jiu-jitsu moves that there can be. So when you think things like lockdown, which is funny, lockdown is called a scorpion lock from Danaher.
Really?
The scorpion
Oh,
lock.
jeez.
And it's like,
Scorpion.
yeah, but it's like versus you have something right away that here's a mainstream name for this technique,
Mm.
right? That everyone calls it lockdown. But it's like, I just like extreme things because it's easier to remember versus like basic elbow escape or whatever. Like sometimes it's really good memory wise, and sometimes it's with a variety of like concepts, you know,
Mm.
it can be difficult. So, I mean, I'm not sure you ever run into that problem with wrestling, like having
Yeah,
like too many different, you know, names for things or.
I would say for the most part, no. But one thing that you do see is like maybe there's a really cool tilt on top in the top position on wrestling,
Sure.
and it's got like 6, 7 different names.
Okay.
But it might have different names based on like the person who did it. So
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
like there's a tilt where you defend a takedown called the Jonesy tilt,
Okay.
because I don't know the full guy's name, but Jonesy was part of his name.
Okay.
And since he hit it on everyone, they called it the Jonesy tilt.
Yeah.
But I have also heard some other terms for it based on other people who also did it really well. So I think a lot of times in wrestling, I've heard names for moves just based on like the person's name who was
Yeah.
really good at it, you know?
The Schultz.
What do you guys think about that? Okay, if you invented a move, would you honestly name it after yourself?
No.
Either would I.
No way.
Even if other people tried to call that the mat move, I'd be like, come on, guys.
The strap-in choke.
The strap and choke. See, that's funny.
That sounds weird.
That sounds funny though. I'm good with funny.
That's a different.
The strap and choke.
Don't say strap on.
Yeah.
So.
I was just going to say
That's
that.
something else.
Strap and choke. That'd be funny.
But I would say it's just very unique. Like the buggy choke was such a weird one because it was actually popularized online from some claimed white belt that did it like 8 years ago, and everyone kind of left it, and then suddenly people were utilizing it
Still
later
haven't gotten
on.
one yet.
So do you find that with like a wrestling room? Like you find people who just try to like make their own way as far as like here's a technique, here's my variation, like here's how I do something, or do you find a lot of people keep, more mainstream?
Yeah, I think I do find people kind of come up with their own variations of things. I know I have, just because I think you mostly find this sort of stuff when you're sparring. So sparring being like, you're not going 100% against each other. It's like a 60, 70% resistance, but you're still letting each other give and take on things. So you can just kind of figure out positions, and it's kind of like throwing caution to the wind and just diving into like weird, funky positions too. And I think through doing that, you find like, oh, like this actually worked for me here. And then you try it in a match or when you go live or whatever, and then it keeps working. Like Matt, that single leg finish I showed you, not the treetop, but the other way I do it. I figured that out just sparring.
Okay.
And I was like, this kind of works. And I started doing it in matches, and I'm like, oh, this really does work. And just kept doing it. I don't have like a name for it, but.
Well, it's interesting because I think there's a lot of people who try to kind of finagle their own way through a grappling match.
Yep.
And then they take those habits into a tournament or competition, and then it gets like demolished. So it becomes a weird thing because like you might be able to hit it off maybe, I don't know, inexperienced persons, but like you said, like you take a state champion or whatever and do it on them. It's like, so it's funny enough that that no-gi clock choke, the main comments underneath it were like, well, it looks really easy for a wrestler to basically do like a sit out from this bomb position. The guy's like, I haven't really seen anyone do it to me. And it's kind of like, immediately I'm thinking Jordan. I'm like, yeah, well,
sit right out of that.
It becomes weird where it's like, you can't do it, or maybe someone can do it, but maybe it's one of those things where if you have more of an understanding or experience of it, you can do it. It's like going for like an elbow escape and someone's like, oh, I could cross collar choke you from like a gi. And it's like, no one's hit it on me. It's like, yeah, well, it doesn't mean that someone high level can't take that opportunity and just like destroy you with it.
Yeah.
But it's only manifesting because of the level of your current
room.
Yeah, your room. It's like, oh, I can hit this really weird variation or whatever. It's like, versus like watching, I'm sure you watch all the time, like top level wrestling, competitions and going like, do you often see a variety of creativeness when it comes to the wrestling room and a high level competition, or do you see pretty strong staple moves?
Yeah, I'd say probably 85% of the stuff you see in the wrestling room, at least the ones I've been in, are like strong, staple fundamentals, foundational stuff. And then the other 15% might be when you're sparring, guys just trying stuff. It depends on the room too. Like I've been in rooms like Izzy style wrestling. I guess I didn't go through like the whole chronological order of all my wrestling stuff.
We're still in middle school. I've been keeping track of this.
I told Matt this because Matt had all these questions for you, and I was just like, I think he's gonna get some really good detailed answers. I'm like, I'm not sure how much time we're gonna have for all this.
Part two,
yes.
Where was I? Izzy style wrestling. So Izzy style wrestling, I think we had a few months sometimes where we didn't even wrestle live. We just sparred every single day. But it was like sparring in certain positions and going from there. And when you do that, you just start to see so many like different things you can try or do from there. And a lot of times you kind of just discover techniques that already exist.
Yeah.
But sometimes you'll discover like a finer detail to finish that technique that you weren't really taught.
That also works for you.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that's something that we were just touching on before that is important for people who are new in their journey to hear, right? Like there's the shape of the technique, and then there's just like your expression
Who
of it.
just said that? You took that from somebody.
The shape.
Yeah.
The shape thing, I think, was a Greg Saunders thing, but I was just,
Yeah, what was that?
I was just meaning just like
That was
however,
Greg Saunders.
however
Yeah.
you like. There's the thing, right?
Yeah.
And there's like the single leg.
Yeah, because he was
Here's
saying
how you do a single leg.
he was saying how the knee slice is like a manifestation, but when
Yeah.
you actually do it, it's a
Yeah,
shape thing.
I'd have to hear him talk more about that. But I'm not sold on that
Maybe
one.
we can have him on the podcast.
But okay, I should say here the process.
Yeah.
Here is the process
Yeah.
of a single leg.
Yes.
And the only thing is though, everybody's like limbs are different, muscle insertion points are different, things like that. So, and then also, you know, how you like where you're strong, like the way you like to move, injury history, all those things probably come together, or they do come together, right? To be like, here's the strongest position you can do this from, right?
And in
like,
grappling, we're accomplishing tasks. Like that's the goal. We're trying to get to inside positions. We're trying, achieving legs and things like that. Techniques are manifestations of that at that point. So I think that's a really good, thing to focus on.
Yeah, I think one thing I wanted to really hone in on too is with wrestling, in jiu-jitsu, any sport really, a lot of people just focus on techniques. But what they should really be focused on is just wrestling or jiu-jitsu is just a continuum of action. So be less focused on techniques and more so on just continuing to move and figuring out the next piece and the next position you want to get to. I think that in general, like that concept and philosophy has taken me really far. And as I noted earlier in like the Romeoville wrestling room, that's where I really started to make gains when it was like, how do I move in this next position versus what's the next technique I can do,
Yeah, there's like a settling that happens otherwise, right? Where
because like, oh, I missed this technique, so now I'm just gonna fall apart here.
Yeah, or oh no, I'm like kind of in their guard. You're kind of. That means you're not. Like, you get out of that thing versus like, oh, I'm kind of they lock their feet, Right. You know what's funny about the getting the responses you want? I just realized something as we were talking. So you said how like a jiu-jitsu room will typically not give you the standing response that you're used to when you're doing like fakes and stuff like that, right? I've noticed when we're rolling, there's things I've tried that work on other people that don't work on you because I'm not getting the response that I normally would get from someone who plays jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Because you are like your innate response would be, like sometimes you like move backwards and disengage in a different way, as where a lot of jiu-jitsu people don't want to do that. And so it was just kind of an interesting thing where I've tried some stuff that works on everyone else and it doesn't seem to work on you because you're just not giving me like pressure in the direction that I need, or like you're not heavy on the part of the body that I would expect you to be heavy on. So it like makes me have to completely adjust what I'm doing. And I think that's cool.
That's where it goes back to saying like the people that you work with, like suddenly a technique or a concept or strategy, I should say, that you utilize on everybody. And then someone like Jordan comes along and gives you a different response.
Yeah.
That's why I liked yesterday rolling, because I was telling Chris afterwards, like, I just enjoy seeing how people respond to things. I enjoy to see, like, let's say people mount me and go, what do you have? I've never worked with you before. Like, I'm just more curious and interested.
Yeah.
Be like, I seen people doing no-gi Ezekiels and things like that. I was just like, cool. Like, try something on me. Like Chris had the really weird footlock the other day on me. And I was like, I'm just more interested in seeing those kind of things. But so to see that, it's like, it's a breath of fresh air versus always kind of get stagnant. Like, okay, you're going to pressure into me. You're going to do this. And also someone does some weird thing that takes you out of that dance.
Yeah. It's actually funny you bring that up, Matt, because as you've been getting better at wrestling, now you're starting to give me the responses.
Oh no, that's not good.
So like I fake at your legs and you
Setting it
actually
up
bring
now.
your leg back. And I'm like, oh, this is great.
So I need to stop doing
Not
that.
amorphous.
That's good. I mean, it's showing the wrestling starting to rub
that's
off on
funny.
you.
I think we just got to turn into where that video I sent you the other day of the guard passer that basically just did like a barrel roll over like just nonsensical passing. Like that's what you just got to turn into now. You just can't give them anything set.
You know what I noticed yesterday? Like I've actually been like my loose passing was my best passing, and I just kind of stopped doing it because I was actually getting it on a lot of people, and then I got to start doing that again. It's just kind of interesting. You use something a lot, and then you kind of stop using it because you're like, okay, well, this is working
that's
too
where,
well.
That's where you can take the pause and you're just more interested how people are responding. Like if you do it all the time, you're like, okay, I'm in the process of doing this move, like a single leg or something, and going like, I just want to see how you respond.
Yeah. And actually, it doesn't work on someone who wants to stand.
Yeah.
Like a lot of my loose passing game,
Getting
I noticed
back
like
to your feet.
I don't. That's actually maybe one of the reasons since we started training together, the thing that most guard players want to stay down most of the time. So once again, the response they're going to give me if I loose pass them is they're going to stay down and try to re-guard me.
Right.
But if I loose pass you, you just try to disengage and stand up.
Here's a great difference, though, is because Jordan's very strong in either top position or standing. So, like, especially like right now, like if he's really in a heated match, like why would he feel comfortable staying, like, I should say in a guarded position, but to like work yourself back up to your feet.
Right.
You know, it's like that's a strong default. Like if you're working a match versus a lot of jiu-jitsu people go, why the heck would I go back up to my feet? Like I'm working down to my hips and my legs. Like you wouldn't want to go back up.
Yeah.
So I think like, let's say 90 or even I'll dare say 95% of jiu-jitsu people like don't want to like build themselves up and stand back up. So we're not used to it as much versus Jordan's like, cool, there's my window.
I just realized
Back
our room
up.
has a bias.
We have biases?
We have a top bias. We do. We totally have a
What
top
does that
bias.
mean, a top bias?
Like if you think about it, most of the people here,
Yeah.
we start standing a lot, even with people who don't like wrestle currently.
Yeah.
Almost everyone starts standing. Very rarely does someone start seated unless it's really busy or crowded or something.
Yeah.
And most people have pretty good top games. And then, at least speaking for myself, my bottom game is my worst game. My bottom half guard is my worst position.
I would say, though, a lot of people who do guard passing here, they, at least I kind of try to push it as well. Like, you at least pop up to your feet and guard pass as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't see really anybody
Like,
passing from their knees unless they're doing over.
Well, I see that so much with, like, the gi, where people will slap bump kneeling and seated, and they'll
combat
they'll
stance.
combat stances. Good correction. They'll start reaching right away for pants, and they'll stay kind of low right away until they start moving. Versus, like, you should be mobile and being up on your feet.
It's actually funny you say that, Matt, because when I first came in here, everyone was on the ground. And I think, though, it's because they heard I was a wrestler. So the common remark was like, oh, I'm not going to stand with you.
Yeah.
And I would always be like, yo, I'm not going to just like run you through the wall. But as they got more comfortable, then they would start standing.
Yeah.
People are scared about getting hurt because, like, there is a continuum there, right? Like, some of the, like, not like freak injuries, but just the matches where someone was just kind of being a jerk was actually from people who had wrestling backgrounds.
Right.
Versus, like, you're one of the best training partners to be with because
It's true.
Like, you're a safe person to wrestle and roll and everything with, right? So
I think this is why we were talking earlier that we're going to do another episode on here with you, but discussing how people can implement a wrestling program into their jiu-jitsu training, because I think
that's gotta be part 2.
Well, that's good. We didn't even get to college yet.
I want to finish. We got to finish the timeline. If that's okay.
But to say the takedown aspect, the wrestling aspect, and then the same we were discussing before, the leg lock stuff, where it's the same fears. Like people go, oh, I don't want to engage with this. I want to disengage. I don't want to, train it. But at the same point, either you're getting taken down by wrestlers or you're getting leg locked by leg lockers. Is like it's going to happen. So how do you implement it into your training without being afraid, doing it safely, the mindset you should be having into it? So I think Jordan would be fantastic, like to discuss about that, because obviously he's an amazing training partner. So it's like to show people like, okay, here's how you can implement it without having to, brutalize your training partners.
I actually got my first injury from rolling with you yesterday, Jordan.
Really?
I bit my tongue.
You made it sound like a compliment.
I bit my tongue.
I
was like, oh no, what did I do?
No. I ended up, I bit my own tongue.
Were you wearing the mouth guard?
Yeah. And like, the only thing is like, I was sitting like this, and my mouth was open, and I was just chomped down on it, and I just had to.
That's bad.
I got this thing over here. It's kind of funny.
That's the worst.
The problem is I just let my tongue relax, and it just like spills out over my teeth.
This can be a little bit of
It's funny.
a connected question, but what has surprised you the most as a wrestler starting your journey, or I should say starting, but like beginning your journey more into jiu-jitsu? Like what surprised you the most about jiu-jitsu in comparison to wrestling?
So there's nothing that really stands out big time, because I just watching like UFC and kind of following like flow grappling and all that stuff, I kind of knew what to expect. I knew I was going to be weak with like triangles and leg locks and things like that. But this is actually a thought I've been having recently. I was like, the way wrestling is designed, you get points for exposing your opponent's back to the mat. But in jiu-jitsu, you want to go to your back so that your back's not exposed to your opponent. So you get rewarded for opposite things.
That is kind of weird.
And
that is.
In wrestling, like you get a ton of points by just exposing your partner's back, but that's actually horrible in a fight, because in wrestling, if I have your back, I'm just going to choke you out.
Yeah.
or knee you in the guts, or like.
Yeah, it's true.
But in jiu-jitsu,
Or get soccer kicked.
Yeah,
I actually think it's like it's rewarded correctly, because I don't think like pulling guard on the street would be smart, but I think like you're gonna probably go to your back versus giving someone your back in an actual fight. So that's like something I've been thinking through, and I'm
You
like,
can still up kick.
I've been more so thinking about like
interesting.
the philosophy of both sports. Like wrestling, you're rewarded for getting up and escaping, but you're giving up your back the entire match if someone takes you down. Versus jiu-jitsu, your back's to the mat, and that now you can actually see your opponent and like go for submissions and things. So I actually think philosophically, I think jiu-jitsu kind of has it right there.
So I wonder why with wrestling then, why in the beginning like the pin was the.
I think it's just like to show supreme dominance, like,
which is interesting. But that's why you're saying that the separation between the dominating factor of it versus applying it to a fight.
yeah,
Let's put it that way. Because jiu-jitsu points to like the side controller, passing guard, or mount. From what I've heard, we actually did we discuss about that yet?
Yeah.
Was in relation to saying how well or how better off you would be in a fight if you got to that position.
Yeah, I think wrestling is amazing. I mean, it's also like you have to look at the goals of both sports. I think wrestling, the goal is really just to completely control your opponent and bring the fight where you want it to go. And the job of someone getting taken down is to get up and escape. In folk style wrestling, at least. Whereas jiu-jitsu, it's like we're moving around until we get a submission or like, time runs out in an actual match.
Yeah.
Which is more comparable to real life because it's like do or die,
Yeah.
So I think the goal of wrestling, it makes sense to have it structured as it is. But when it comes to a fight, like the whole top and bottom position of wrestling, I would never want to be on bottom in a fight because I'm completely exposing my back. It's basically like turtle position, but I'm not turtled up. I'm like completely exposed. And someone could just take
your
my
inside
neck.
position is all open and every spot, right?
But I will say too, from the bottom position in wrestling, there's a lot of great things that I've been able to translate over to jiu-jitsu that help me escape, like if someone has my back or if I'm in turtle, like I kind of still know how to get up and get away.
That's true.
Because of the wrestling bottom position. So I think the main surprise I've had translating over into jiu-jitsu is really just more philosophical. What they're both trying to do, and just realizing like, oh, jiu-jitsu is actually more appropriate for a fight in the bottom position than wrestling. But I think wrestling's amazing if you're ever in a fight because you can take the fight where you want it to go.
You see some people like Jocko and Rogan talk about like that should be like the main martial art right away. Is wrestling.
Well, there's a couple things here too to unpack from that. The first is, we're trying to figure out why is it like getting the opponent to their back is the big deal, right?
Right.
And I wonder if that's because like your hands and feet are your weapons, right? And wherever your weapons are pointing is where you'll end up being able to do the most damage and have the most control over yourself.
Yep.
And so if you think about it, how do you once again have the most show of domination over another human being within a sport context? It would be having them able to have all their weapons facing the thing and being able to have that not matter.
Right.
And so which is what a pin is, right? Because their hands and feet are facing the floor because they don't want to get pinned and you're still able to get them pinned. Also with wrestling, some of the rule set, I do wonder if there's an aspect too of youth like organization. So as a parent, when I look at wrestling, something's kind of nice. I don't have to worry about my son's neck getting cranked as bad, potentially, as in jiu-jitsu, where a guillotine
chokes,
or even like arm bars and stuff like that are less likely. So there's kind of like just like all sports, there's an agreement of what you're both going to do, but wrestling has kind of like almost like a safer air to it in that regard. From like a parent looking at it, where you're like, okay, they're just trying to hold each other down.
Which is very interesting. So I'll play a small devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Feel free to correct me, but the idea that how many adults though seem, we'll get this in another episode, but like are afraid to do takedown aspects because of the impact.
Injuries.
Like you saying the post, or even like what was that? I can't remember that injury. You're telling me like you hurt your wrist, but that was like a freak.
Remember,
was that you doing something, or was that someone? Did
when I broke my hand.
Yeah.
That wasn't even off a takedown. I just tried to block a single leg, and my hand just smacked the mat really hard.
And obviously, like every sport, there's going to be injuries, and I can go on about.
Remember, this is designed by people who don't necessarily do jiu-jitsu too, though.
Did I ever tell you about the crazy stat I found when I was doing a kinesiology project? Because I was talking about like injuries in sports. Which sport had the highest emergency room visits?
I have a guess.
What was it?
Probably cheerleading or soccer.
It's close. Ballet.
Ballet. Okay.
Oh wow!
I know.
I never would have
cheerleading-
guessed that.
Cheerleading had the most neck and head injuries.
Yeah, but something like
They-
you
they
you
throw
see
the chicks in
visually
the
and
air,
like,
you know?
oh, they're just whatever flips or whatever. But versus like football or basketball,
kinda
football or
crazy.
something like impact wise.
Was that like a sport? Here's where we can get funky with data, though, right? Because it was like, is that injuries per practice hour?
Oh,
Was
yeah.
that like what was the data set? Like how was it
That's true.
formulated, right?
Right.
Because that
Yeah.
could also really skew the data.
Well, it's just saying like you're talking about like
Is it a
injuries.
percent?
Like it's tough because when and obviously it becomes different. Like when we were at Grappling Industries a couple weeks ago and watching, we were like dead set in front of watching like 5 or 6 year olds full on grapple. Parents are screaming nonstop.
Yeah, it was silly.
And but the kids like would get to arm locks or get to chokes, and it was like the most nicest little tap.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
The kids were
and-
doing great. Some
and
of those
I'm done.
parents needed
It's
to tone
like,
it down a little
Oh,
bit.
100%. But it was
Some
like,
of them were great though.
but like the injury wise, like as far as the kids are concerned, like there wasn't like
They also
this
they're not
intensity.
allowed to do guillotines. They're not allowed to do.
Oh, that's right.
There's only like 4 or 5 techniques you're allowed at that age.
So maybe if you had it in a collegiate sense of like in middle school and high school, maybe jiu-jitsu would look a little bit different. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
like you couldn't like do said things, and then maybe until you got to high school. I always wanted that, and this is kind of like why we wanted to start more of a youth wrestling program, because it's difficult to throw, younger people to jiu-jitsu, if not in the beginning for like self-defense,
Right.
which is weird because like how many people start wrestling for self-defense?
Wrestling is
like,
great self-defense.
oh, it should.
Yeah.
But I'm saying like as far as like a parent is concerned, it gets very enticing of like, here's karate or here's,
Yeah.
a martial art, quote unquote, like what they define as a martial art, like striking, things like that, versus like, dude, get your kids into wrestling. Like if you don't have a jiu-jitsu school near you or something like that, like, or even just as a activity as well, like grappling is just,
I
this
know
is why we do this.
a ton of my really
Podcast.
good friends actually started all wrestling at like 5, 6.
Really?
Like really young.
Ooh.
There's actually a lot of youth programs that start kind of at that age.
Okay.
It's more of just a fun activity,
Good.
But or some of them have like pushy parents who wrestled and kind of living through
Oh.
their kids, and then it's rough, and they burn
Yeah.
out. But
Well, and you were saying the other day of, if you were have a kid one day, like getting them into like a grappling sport.
Yep.
And talking about like,
That was
Some
one of
of
the
it-
questions I had for you.
oh, did you?
Yeah.
Had about what you would encourage, and then you even said the other day about weight cutting and stuff too,
Yeah.
like some of the more the culture and stuff behind it as well. So I would just say like, is that what you would encourage a lot more, like either jiu-jitsu or wrestling, or like something you would like lean them towards right away to attend?
yeah, I would say growing up, I've seen a lot of those parents who are like the crazy dad on the mat, and their kid eventually just hates the sport by the time it really matters, and they're like in college and stuff. You just see so many really good guys burn out because of stuff like that. So I would never want to be a pushy parent, and I've had a lot of really good examples of how to raise a kid and get them interested in wrestling from my college coaches, all sorts of coaches I grew up with. And what they do is they're just like, hey, I coach wrestling, so you're gonna have to come with me to practices sometimes.
right.
You don't actually like have to wrestle or anything.
Yeah.
You can just kind of be exposed to it. Like there's a picture I have with my coach Joe Dubuque, who's now head coach at Princeton, and the picture was his daughter in a baby crib on the mat off to the side while we're wrestling.
That's awesome.
You're gonna get this absorbed
Yeah.
one way or another.
And
That's awesome.
I don't think
Talk
she
about great brainwashing.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
I don't even know what's happening.
exactly. It's just like exposing him to it.
Yeah.
But it's not pushing it. So like I know his kids play like softball and all
Yeah.
that, and it's just like, hey, if they get the itch, let them wrestle and stuff. But if not, like,
Who cares?
no hard feelings. Like,
Yeah.
It's such a hard balance because just like we talked about earlier, as far as like encouraging kids to continue onwards, even if they're having a bad day or something like that, like that's that weird balance. I love this quote. I'm not sure how applicable it is, but saying, have your kids quit on a good day.
yeah, yep, I've
Right?
heard that.
It's like, because if they quit on a good day, it just means like, even though everything went fantastic today, it's like, this still isn't for me.
That's cool. I like that.
But I'm not sure like how applicable it can be. Like obviously if, you hear kids or parents who like, oh, give it like the full 12 weeks or give it like
Yeah,
one
give it a season.
one season. Yeah. And then at the end of it, like, and I've heard Jill do that with her son too, to be like, give it the full thing, and if you don't like it at the end of it and
Yeah.
just consistently, then you can move on. But like, I think most people, like you're saying, have the obstacle and then they go, oh, it's not for me. This isn't fun. It's like, yeah, but there's a depth to it when you overcome something that's where it becomes addicting.
I've seen some good examples of that. one kid I was coaching, he was like very scared of wrestling at the next level. I think just really nervous and didn't feel like he was there skill wise, but he stuck with it for like the season. And then afterwards he came the next season and he's like,
Yeah, that's cool.
oh, this is for me.
Whoa,
And I just stayed with
yeah.
it, you know?
Just kind of got the bug.
Yeah.
That's
So
cool.
it's like sometimes quit on a good day, maybe should be like quit after a few weeks.
Yeah, that's true.
On a good few weeks, you
A
know?
good few weeks.
So,
But, yeah, go for it, man.
okay, I was gonna say I got a couple questions.
Yep.
And I think we're gonna have to we'll probably have to finish your timeline on another one.
Yeah.
So we'll just have to know that we will have to start at high school on the next one.
Yes.
So we got through middle school and elementary school area. So I think that's awesome. First off, I have a silly request for you.
Yeah.
If you compete at Grappling Industries, can you start the match, sit down, sit down? No, here, you
I
don't
knew he
have to
was
like
gonna say
play it from
this.
there.
Yeah.
But like sit down,
Oh, yeah.
like slap bump, back step, sit down like you're gonna play guard, and then stand up and then wrestle the crap
Oh,
out of
yeah.
them.
So-
Just to kind of like give them a bait and switch, you know?
If you
So
guys,
funny.
I'm sure you guys watched Quintet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nicky Rod kept sitting.
Yeah.
And then when I think it was Owen,
Yep.
Owen Lexi, yeah.
when he would step in, he'd just go single him.
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah, so
yeah.
you're gonna wrestle up.
Yeah.
I was gonna say it'd be really funny if you like played like a guard game for a second, and then you stand up and they're like, because they're gonna make some assumptions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and then they're like,
So bad.
"Oh," you know, and then you just wrestle the crap out of them.
Well, and that's actually pretty good because if you
Oh,
do
it'd be
that,
funny.
the other person would probably be more tempted to engage in a guard pass.
Right.
Versus like them sit as well. Versus if Jordan slap bumps and he touches the mat and he's moving around,
Yeah.
the other guy might go, crap. I'm just gonna sit and go, oh, boo. Like, I got a guard pass you now? Like, come on, man.
It'll be really good. This is one nice thing the gi has over no gi. If you like walk onto the mat and like
how
tie
you
your
said the
belt
one
wrong,
thing. That's funny.
you know, tie your belt wrong or something like that.
Oh, yeah. It just made it sound look so horrible.
Like,
Like,
yeah,
oh,
like,
I don't.
and have it
don't
just
know,
be like
coach.
crisp, super clean
Yeah.
blue belt, like it's never been worn. You know?
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
That starts getting into weird territory. I remember they were saying like online about like, and this actually had, I shouldn't say complications with Jordan, because Jordan obviously, like, I'll put it out there, like, you basically have black belt grappling skills, right?
Yeah.
Like he does. I'll put that out there. But the difference is that Jordan is still blue belt, and that progression as far as, you know, work on your guard and work on submissions, like that's self-admitted by him too. But what becomes difficult is that when you enter a grappling tournament, which is what it is,
How many years of jiu-jitsu have you been
yeah,
doing?
it's like this idea that he could take anyone down. He can basically hold down anybody in let's say a blue belt category, I'll admit. But it's like full domination. Like you could probably take someone down, hold someone down, and get like 8-10 points without ever having to submit somebody. And
It'd be
he
funny
would-
if you took
he
him
would just
down and
win.
then stood him back up and then took him back and then
Pull
stand
him back up, like, let's do this again. But
30
like,
points.
but he would be really good at that. But the hard part is when you see like coaches and such watch that, it's like, well, he technically is clearly demonstrating things above that blue belt rank, right? Or like it's always that classic thing, like, oh, you get in your division, you see this across from you, it's like Khabib with a white belt, or you know, like some MMA
Yeah.
grappler or something like that, where it's like they're technically a white belt or blue belt in the jiu-jitsu aspect, but they're by far no means that rank as far as a grappler is concerned.
Yeah. I think too, I always had a hard time putting people away in wrestling. Like I could take people down all day, but I could never really pin anyone. I was just so
interesting.
awful at pinning people.
Interesting.
That's interesting.
Why do you think that is?
I think some of it is my wrestling club when I was growing up, Izzy style wrestling, where I spent a ton of time. We were so focused on takedowns and not as much in like the top position
Okay.
that maybe I could have used a little more work there.
Okay.
And we kind of got exposed when we would go to like tournaments like the Iron Man, which is like one of the biggest tournaments in high school wrestling. And we wrestled guys from like Pennsylvania. Those guys are all killers on the mat.
Okay.
Some of mat wrestling too was just effort. And for some reason, like I always would give the maximum effort on my feet, but I could never really like turn it on in the top position. Maybe I just wasn't confident enough there, but yeah, I think I just didn't spend enough time there, honestly, and didn't build the confidence. But what I'm trying to do in jiu-jitsu is, and I'm having the same problems now, is I can get to a lot of good positions and submissions. I'm having a hard time finishing them. So, Levi, you were saying too, like one of the focuses I should have, and it is definitely one of my focuses, is just being a killer. So once I get to the position, like finish the submission.
Yeah.
And I've been trying. I'm just having a hard time.
Well,
finishing.
that's where you're at this point in the journey.
Yeah.
Like, and this was kind of my point. It's like he could throw people around all day in a competition, but it's like you know, like anybody watching could see clearly he's got grappling skills. So it's kind of weird because most schools or most people doing jiu-jitsu someplace, and again, it's another conversation, but like you're getting taught by some jiu-jitsu coach how to do wrestling. Like I was in the same boat. And it's like, so their grappling skills, they've been doing it for 2 or 3 years, is like, oh, maybe a judo toss or maybe a single leg. It's like, but as a wrestler coming in, like he would be a brown or black belt as far as grappling skills. But in a jiu-jitsu competition, like this is kind of where we talked about, like, actually it's a good comparison. Like he could get points for takedowns, but he can't like end the match. Let's say statistically, let's say against another blue belt, like probably doesn't have the highest percentage of finishing the match.
Right.
But yet he still gets awarded points in victory styles if he just puts people away. Like, or sorry, like just pins people all the time or like holds them down. So it becomes weird. It's like, so in theory, you could basically dominate a jiu-jitsu match, but yet the spirit of the jiu-jitsu isn't there. Like you said, you could win wrestling matches, but like the spirit, we talked about the other episode of like the pin, you were saying, like I can do all these things, but the pin always kind of like eluded me more than you wanted to.
So what subs are you focusing on then to be?
Yes, which instructionals should I be watching on the opposite end?
You know, and I think I know the answer, but I'm curious.
Yeah, so I think I've noticed, at least where I'm at right now, I'm really enjoying like the guillotine series, anacondas, darces.
Oh yeah.
I can get myself to those positions pretty easily.
Yeah.
Finishing,
and you're really good at getting at somebody's head.
Yeah,
particularly
exactly.
mine. You know, like I feel like you always have my head somewhere.
It was really after like 3 weeks ago when we did the Anaconda Dar series.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my goodness, like I'm gonna use the crap out of this. And the thing is, sometimes I know I'm not gonna get it because like your arm's out or something, and like I can't really cinch the anaconda.
Yeah.
But guess what else is like right there? I can like pop up into mount because I'm holding your head and arm. Or I can just switch it over to the darts.
It's a control position.
Exactly.
Too.
Yeah.
Or the head guillotine with the like weird grip, and then I go over your back is there. That's all good stuff. And then the Kimura trap. I actually was playing that a lot yesterday and earlier this week, and I was getting a lot of good back takes from that.
It's so good because people sit up into it.
Exactly.
And
you can even dive from half guard with a Kimura trap.
Yeah.
I got a quick story. So yesterday I'm just rolling Chris's like top guys, like they were just, phenomenal. And this one guy had a really time passing my guard. He just flew over with a Kimura trap.
Whoa.
Like he just jumped right over. But because I've seen it so many times, like the moment he was going, I was already tucking my elbow. And then as he was trying to push me or try to extend me, I threw my leg over, basically straightened out his Kimura and got an arm lock on him.
But nice.
But the idea was the whole like, yeah, I know. Sorry. It was just cool. It was like very, I shouldn't say dramatic, but it was like a really intense, like explosive jump. And it was only because my eyes were quick enough to recognize what was happening that I got it. But it was cool because he's a really sweet guy that he was asking me questions afterwards, asking why he couldn't finish it or put it away. So I was giving him all these details.
Because I'm Levi Van Strappen.
Van Strappen, yes. That was the strap-in defense.
Yeah.
You should watch my YouTube channel. Yes, strap on in. But it's so bad. But it's things like that where it's really good as far as the control series with it. But again, it can kind of bring you in a lot of places. So I like it, but it's kind of like like the pin is not working for me, or like let's say this guy the other day was like the guard passing wasn't working for me. It's a nice like fallback to be like, oh, this isn't working, but now you have this position that you can take people's back, choke them, kimuras, and all that kind of fun stuff. So nice.
Couple more questions for you, Jordan.
Oh, we're blasting through this.
I know. Okay, so yeah, it sounds like you're working on some like guillotine style things. That's awesome. Been on the receiving end of some of that. And so we were talking a little bit about your like strength and conditioning that you're doing outside of class. So what does your like current program look like? How many days a week do you go? Like, like what is that? Just like, what are like the kind of the actionable aspects of that?
Yeah. So this is a great question. So I would say the last 2-3 years, I've really been trying to figure out what program works for me. Obviously, just like wrestling or doing jiu-jitsu in and of itself is like a great workout, but that's not enough for me because I feel like I have some other athletic goals. Like,
oh yeah, what are they?
Like doing, I want to learn all sorts of really cool flips. Like I have like a list of them.
That's cool.
I feel like I haven't hit my athletic peak yet. And to do that, I need to gain mastery of my body. And to me, mastery of my body means being able to do cool body weight things like flips,
That's a
planches,
good point. Yeah.
things like that.
planche push-ups.
You ever heard of the book Overcoming Gravity?
I've heard of that.
it,
Yeah.
It's a good book.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really got some cool progressions in it and stuff.
So I've been looking like books like that. There's a book called The Motion Handbook. I don't
Okay.
even think it's available anymore. It's by this guy named the Motion Guy on Instagram. And he's like this dude out in Bali who I think was an Olympic powerlifter.
Oh, okay.
But he actually found for him powerlifting kind of destroyed his body and like
It's rough.
it was rough on him. So he got back to more calisthenic stuff. And now this dude just does crazy. He can just do crazy skills, full
That's cool.
planche push up to handstands. I don't think he does like flips and stuff, but
Planche, push up to hand. You know what? I have a question on this one.
yeah.
So, is this dude just like giant too, or
No.
not? Because like that's something I've noticed with like a lot of the gymnastics stuff when you see them on Instagram. Like, I want to see someone who's like 6 foot,
Yeah.
like doing some of this stuff just to see that it's possible. You
Yeah.
know, like that'd be cool.
Yeah, like a body weight ratio.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
certain
like,
things.
There's a
like
guy
a big
named
basketball player doing it or something.
there's a guy named Juji on Instagram. I forgot his
What,
full
Juji
handle.
Mufu?
Yeah, him.
He's
He does
giant.
like flips and splits
He's
and all that
giant
stuff.
too.
Yeah.
He's like 250.
Yeah.
He's so big.
So I mean, he's kind of an example.
Yeah,
but,
that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I just want to attain strength in like these crazy ranges, and I also want to be able to do flips and stuff because I think like it really shows like I have control of my body.
Yeah.
And like if you can do flips and stuff, it's like screw gravity. Like
They're
I do what I
fun.
want.
Yeah. Do what I want.
So I think that stuff is super cool,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what I'm trying to train for. So what I've done is I've taken all my learnings from like the Motion Handbook stuff I've just learned through experience. In college, I did a ton of like powerlifting-esque stuff.
Mhm.
I don't really like that anymore because I found it was hard on my body too. So stay away from that. So what I mostly do now is calisthenics related work, but I do EMOMs. Do you know what those are?
Yeah, every minute on the minute.
Exactly. And I do it with density. So what does that last part mean? So the Motion Handbook guy, he has a system where he, if you were to, you know how like when you mark out like sets and reps, it'll be like 5 sets of 3. So it'll be like 5x3. The way he defines his stuff is like 10d4. So what does that mean? That means,
I know what 10d4 means.
do you?
10 D4 dices.
I've got my own 10d4s.
So the way the format works is what the 10 means is 10 minutes. The D is density. So
Okay.
within every minute on the minute, I'm going to fit in 4 reps of whatever exercise I'm doing, and I'm going to do this for 10 minutes.
Okay, so you get 40 reps.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's all about density. How much can you pack into like a short workout? And my program is basically I pick out 3 to 4 exercises. I set up EMOMs for them.
Do you
and-
kind of like pick a like something that's like more pushing, something that's a little more pulling, something that's a little more like lower body, like to kind of cycle through?
Yeah, so I actually do full body every day. So
Okay.
it's
How many days a week?
right now, I think if I'm super sore from jujitsu, I just can't do it every day.
Yeah.
Because like I can tell like yesterday my shoulders were starting to hurt at
Yeah,
the
I'm
end.
actually,
I was like,
woke up, I was middle of the night, I woke up and was like, I'm pretty sore. I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
training tomorrow.
well, the whole point of the program too is to be able to do this stuff every day because you're only doing 30-minute sessions,
Okay.
3 exercises, 10 minutes for each.
Okay.
But you're fitting in, like if I do 4 reps of weighted pull-ups every minute, I'm still not doing my max. I'm leaving like 1, 2, 3
Yeah.
in
Like
the
free from
tank.
failure.
Exactly. So that I'm not too sore the next day and I can keep doing
Yeah.
stuff.
We talked about that before, right?
Yeah.
Of just saying like going to like your max versus like leaving some of the tank.
Oh yeah, I think it's a super smart thing to do. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
fun. It's fun to like burn the candle,
Yeah.
but like it actually takes discipline to go. I am not supposed like it's. You can always do more tomorrow,
Right.
but if you do too much today, you can't take. It's just going to take away.
Well,
from
that
you
was like
before
the
they get good.
whole the theory of like the Russian training where it was like they just did a lot of volume.
Yeah.
Just
It's like
on
you
the
did
mats
do it
a lot.
all the time versus like you go 100% that you burned out, 100% you burned out.
When it comes to skill acquisition in calisthenics and things, you actually need to get reps and you need to get volume and you need to put your body in that long range position
Mhm.
so that it starts to adapt to it and get comfortable with it. If you go and like do a 1 rep max on like a planche push up with like a crazy weighted vest on, like one, you're just not gonna get used to doing the skill because
Yeah.
the weight's just gonna throw you off. And 2, like that's a position where your arms are like by your hands are by your hips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're really extending your joints and things out. So it's tough on your joints. So you can't be doing heavy weighted stuff with that.
Sure.
or you're just not gonna be able to do it the next few days.
So how long you been doing this type of programming?
Yeah, so I created an actual program I could show you guys.
Okay.
That's been working
Yeah,
for
because
me.
I'm getting hyped and wanting to do this.
I was gonna say, yeah, my
I
training.
I could see some handstand
So
training.
it's 4 days a week, or just 4 days,
Whenever you get to it.
sequentially, exactly, of actual strength training for calisthenic skills and things. And then the last 3 days are actually mobility training. But mobility is also just strength training.
Yeah.
So I do weighted stuff, but in like positions
Doing like
like
Cossack squats and stuff like that.
Yeah. Do you guys know like the pigeon stretch?
Yeah,
It's like doing that on a bench with weights and like squatting down and squatting up. I actually have a jiu-jitsu mobility program I got from this guy named there's a guy on Instagram who does like mobility strength training workouts
Okay.
for sports. So like he
that's
just
cool.
came out with one for jiu-jitsu that I actually been
What
doing
was his
too.
name? Do you know his name?
I think it's like something Maestro, flexibility Maestro or
Oh,
something.
I know the name.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So I can actually show you guys the program, but the gist of it is I do E-bombs. I usually do each exercise for 10 minutes.
You do this at home?
I do this at home. I have a bunch of equipment and stuff. And then the last thing I'll do is I'll track it week to week. So
Yeah.
I have my exact numbers for everything I've been doing.
Yeah.
So I can see like
I got 40 this week. I got 42 the next week.
it won't
kind of
even
thing.
be, so I'll already know right off the bat how many reps I'm going to do. What I'll tweak is either the weight, if I do like a weighted vest,
Okay.
or the next week I'll say like, okay, 4 reps was easy this week, so I'm going to just set it to 5. And my goal is like, I'm progressing very slowly. So like,
Yeah.
if I still feel like, oh, 5 was way too easy, I'm not jumping the gun. I'm
Yeah,
just
just
sticking
take
with
your
it.
time.
Yeah.
So how's that been working for you?
It's been really good. I mean,
Yeah?
there's some positions like the planche push-up can take people like a year plus.
Yeah.
I've noticed my mobility in my shoulders is way better for
Nice.
push-ups and stuff now because I've just been doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm noticing small gains, but
Well, you were saying that before of like kind of how you motivate yourself. Like before you could barely hold it for like a second, and now you
Yeah.
got like 2 or 3 seconds or something like that.
yeah, so what I showed in class the other day was if you put your hands down to the mat and then you bend over them and you slowly bring your feet off the mat, you can hold that position and go up to like a handstand. And like a few months ago, I couldn't even like get my feet off the mat because I just fall over the second I did.
I'm gonna have to see this after the podcast.
Yeah, I'll show you.
Okay.
But now I can do it and keep my feet off the mat for like a second or two. But like
Ooh.
as small as that is, like it's huge because I could not do it at all a few months
But
ago.
it looks so elegant. I've seen some people do it. Like imagine there, your feet just slowly rise
Yeah.
up to the air. Like
Yeah.
that's so overcoming gravity. Like it looks so cool. Might say
That's-
like Goku push-ups or something like that.
So what do you do for your lower body? Because like that's always the critique with the calisthenic stuff, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like there's so many awesome options, even with just with like a set of rings and a pull-up bar that you can do. But with like lower bodies are strong, right? And so
Yep.
they require sometimes a lot more volume or a lot more intensity, right, to be able to get whatever response you're trying to get out of them.
Yes. So I've actually been doing a lot of lower body stuff too. The mobility part of my program really hits the lower body hard.
Okay.
But what's been great is the very first day of every week, I do pistol squats.
Okay.
I was gonna say pistol squats. I was
Yeah.
thinking like a feat for the lower body. Like
Yeah.
I used to love pistol
So-
squats.
Dragon squats is what I want to ultimately get to.
Oh yeah, get to that one where you can like grab
Yeah.
your foot and do the thing on the bench.
Oh,
Those are
jeez.
crazy. So
That's cool.
one day I'll get to that. But the pistol squats, holy crap. Like I'm noticing muscles getting bigger in my glutes.
Nice.
Yeah.
that were not ever really trained, I guess. And
That's
maybe
cool.
the pistol squat.
I
is
thought it was
hitting them.
fantastic. I had a quick story when I was in my kinesiology degree, and we were talking about different movements, and the teacher was talking about pistol squats. And he's like, "Can anyone do a pistol squat?" And there's a couple like big athletic guys at UW Oshkosh that was trying to do it, and then I'm like, "I think I could do it," and I just went all the way down.
Yeah, you pulled it
and
off.
I sit and just held it for like 5 seconds, like my leg
Could you
fully
stand
out,
up,
and I
though?
could stand right up.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. He's like, "Oh, I probably guessed that with your jiu-jitsu background." But it was like
Sick.
always one of those weird ones where I could just go down and hold it and come back up. But it didn't. And I think a lot of it was glute activation from jiu-jitsu
Yep.
and karate was just, I can like hit this pretty hard.
I think like joint positioning and stuff too makes a big difference.
What was it? Like Jill was having difficulty with squats.
If you have
Ankle mobility,
Well, also-
hip mobility.
So like as someone who's got really long legs and a short torso, squats have always been like if you think about if you have a long femur, your ankles need to be ridiculous to the point
Oh,
like they
to
have to
go
be so
through.
flexible. It's to the point where like you're hitting bone, like there's no more range. You're
Sure.
just mushed up into everything.
Yeah.
And so that's something that like it took me a long time to figure out where I was like, oh, I'm like I got long femurs and it changes the way you can squat versus if you're short femurs and long torso, you can squat like freaking,
Right.
you know.
Well, I think it goes back to Jordan's point of like creating a custom either grappling program or strength and conditioning program because every body is different. Every weird injury you have, every nuances of leg length and arm length and all that kind of stuff like plays to a fact like, oh, you could do this really easy. Well, I can't or something like, or bigger bodies or smaller bodies. Like there's general themes, but
so besides pistol squats, what else?
What else is there?
Like weighted Cossack squats or something?
There's like ISO holds I do where my legs extended out onto like a bench or something.
Okay.
And then I lift it and hold it for like 20, 30 seconds.
Okay.
What else is there?
Well,
and I have
what about
so
things for
much
your like
stuff on that.
hamstrings and stuff like that?
There's what's it called?
Like
Good mornings.
Oh, good mornings.
Good mornings with dumbbells.
Yeah,
I have. Have you heard of monkey feet?
Yeah, those things are cool.
I have one of those. So
Nice.
put a weight on the bottom of it, and then you bring your knees up.
Yeah.
That's more hips.
Oh,
but
that's cool.
Yeah, your hip flexors.
I'll
and
show you
such.
my program because I have a ton of leg stuff in there.
Okay.
I cannot remember off the top of my head, but I'll show it to you. I
That'd
have
be
it on
cool.
my phone. So
I wonder how much
that'd
with
be
the
neat.
leg stuff, like it would have to be abs as well, like raising legs and things like that too.
yeah, I actually find from all the research I've done, a lot of the athletes I really liked, they don't really train their abs because all the stuff they're doing is training their abs.
It's true.
So I actually nowadays don't set aside any time to train my abs because I feel like I'm getting that.
Yeah. Plus jits and stuff. You're doing
exactly.
so much, like reaching up
Yeah.
and stuff.
That's why I made the joke with Jill of like doing sit-ups. I couldn't do more than 10 sit-ups. Like it looks silly because like, oh, we're grappling all the time, but it's like, how many times am I going like sitting up nonstop? It's like one sit-up and I'm connected. Like I don't need to go multiple times.
Right.
Like I could do one and then, my abs rest and maybe I'll do another one.
What capacity are you gaining by that?
Yeah, like just doing one
Also,
explosive one.
Are abs the thing that's stopping you from progressing your jiu-jitsu game?
Well, so of all my strength and conditioning research in regards to grappling, and you always hear a lot different people like Donaher was a good one. He said, in my training room, I had so many different athletes train so many different things. Like George St. Pierre was all like gymnastics training that he was getting
and
into.
track.
And then
stuff.
guys like Gordon Ryan do more bodybuilding-esque stuff and things like that. And he said the one thing consistently that he has seen work and help any grappling athletes was straight leg raises.
Interesting.
Like toe to bar.
Okay.
That's actually so I also have a whole list of exercises I want to do because my program only covers so many things.
Yeah.
But there's so many more things I want to add in once I finish this 12 weeks. So then I'll like
you do a
change it up
12-week meso. Is that what you pretty much do?
I kind of just set it. I think I set my program to like 12 weeks right now. I'm just experimenting with it.
Yeah.
To see if I make progress.
But
And
do you
then-
have like a bulleted list of like these are the moves I want to do? Like as far as
you
gymnastics,
say,
like
20 of them.
oh, that's
yeah,
list. Oh, sorry,
I've got
that's
a
the
list of them.
Okay.
And I'm all these exercises I'm doing is to work up to those.
So cool.
So I'm doing like progressions I've seen on like YouTube University
I'm telling
of
you.
like
Get the book Overcoming Gravity. I think you'll like it.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
Yeah, like it's the whole half back of it is all progression models.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
That's exactly what I'm following, like progressions I've seen on YouTube of like calisthenic athletes and stuff, or the motion guy I follow. And
is there one technique that you like extremely want to get? Like something
what's
that
your white whale?
White whale, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the planche push-up is really
Those
up
are
there
so
for
cool.
me because if you can do push-ups without your legs, you're freaking
crazy,
savage.
It's like I like to do my armless rope climbs,
Yeah. No, I think flips are right up there for me too.
Sure.
I do think I need more hammy exercises first, though.
Are you seeing front flips or back flips?
I can do backflip.
Okay.
More like what do you even call some of them? Like
handsprings and stuff.
There's
not
side
handsprings,
flips.
like corkscrews in the
Yeah,
air and
corkscrew
like
stuff, yeah.
So
XMA.
I actually used to do a lot
I
of
would
tricking. I used to
not-
do a lot.
Really?
Yeah,
I'm
like,
not surprised by
I
that.
could do back flips, front flips. I could do, you know what, weird one. I could even do like corkscrew stuff. I could do like on a good day. I could do like butterfly twist, gainers, things like that.
gainers, yeah.
But
slant
you know what, the
gainers.
one that always eluded me that was like super simple, or there's two back handsprings. I can never get.
Really?
I can never get back handsprings. I
Yeah.
like, and in retrospect, it's probably because my spine is like so short that I don't really like move very much. But the other one was aerials. I could do a like no-handed round off, but I couldn't do an aerial like a full just like cartwheel without my hands.
Yep.
Sure.
You know, and it's kind of funky, but Yeah, I used to. That stuff was fun. It was a lot of
Aerials,
fun.
I spent like a week on those once a long time ago.
You know,
But
the thing that probably helped me the most was doing a lot of stuff on a springboard floor.
yeah,
I just spent a ton of time.
What was that one?
And then-
Nina. Is that what you went
Actually,
to?
the one I used to go to Gym Kids a lot when I was younger.
Gym Kids.
That was in
Yeah, Gym
Appleton.
Kids, yeah. Oh, Gym Kids, yeah.
Yep, I used to go there like every week when I was in high school. I thought it was fun.
yeah. Actually, if you guys have any recommendations, like Riley, my fiance, she was one day we were like, what if we like found like a adult gymnastics
My wife
place?
and I have been talking about
Yeah.
this. So my wife does aerial arts.
Okay.
That's a little more.
It's down the flats.
That's down on the flats. That's more like a circus style stuff though, like the silks and stuff.
Yeah.
But I thought that looked fun.
Yeah, some big giant rings.
Yeah,
too,
she did the
and-
big rings. She just did that this week,
That's sweet.
and then she does like there's also pole classes. Too.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we want to do those. I guess we could. I might
for
do
Matt.
one.
Yeah.
It'd be
The,
fun.
the one I always thought was really cool that I thought was the most applicable to jiu-jitsu was acro yoga. Did you
Yeah.
ever see that?
Oh yeah.
Like they're holding people up with their feet
Yeah.
Yeah.
and moving people around. I'm like,
Airplane.
I'll
that's
admit-
guard play right there, just the whole time, just moving
I
people
was a
around.
little judgy on that. I'm judgy with strength conditioning.
Yeah.
I'm so judgy.
It's like, but
But-
it's as far as like a physical activity, like moving around, or like it was very much like I should say like a couples thing.
Mm.
But it's like
That's
the,
cool in
the
that
woman
regard.
is more like the shapes
flyer,
and
the
things like
top
that,
one,
and
yeah.
the bottom person is just kind of holding, manipulating. Like there was some guy on Instagram that would like, I shouldn't say grab random girls, but like it was staged, but like would grab them and move them around, and the whole comment section is like, hey, see some girls for us. Like just like how easy he's making this like look, and just like, hey,
I
look
think
how
I know
cool
who you're
this is.
talking about.
Yeah. And
But-
just like would play it. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Honestly, though, if you can find like a gymnastics floor, that's really helpful. The YMCA
I was gonna say why,
in Kimberly, you still allow open mats.
Yeah,
but
that
now they
was the one I
don't
was thinking
anymore
of.
now, ever since
Oh,
COVID.
wow.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a bummer because we used to like to go there. But like, it's I know it's not great advice because it's like now you have to go find one.
Yeah.
But that helps so much for when I was doing backflips and stuff
Yep.
because you can just practice again and again and again.
That's
and
what I
again.
was thinking. Yeah.
And I haven't done a backflip in years on the ground. I'll do them on the trampolines and stuff.
Yeah.
We were
So-
actually just talking about altitude the other week. That place is a
It's
freaking
true.
blast, Jordan.
Yes.
Yeah, next time I go, because like it's weird if you just go as an adult.
Yeah.
But like I bring my kids there.
Yeah.
So next time I'll bring my kids and I'll be like, dudes, come on.
Yeah, just
Like,
come here. We got 2 kids here.
yeah, we got 2 kids. We're
credited.
good. We're good.
I'll just
We
shave
just got to
my
be
facial
around
hair.
them
Yeah,
a little
exactly.
bit, you know? But yeah, and be like,
That is interesting because just like we're talking about like adult wrestling, like
Yeah.
adult gymnastics.
yeah. My wife and I talked about how much fun that would be to just like, not to derail the conversation any more than we've already,
that's
know.
true.
But it's
Yeah.
been good.
adult gymnastics.
There's like a time I think maybe you'll resonate with this too, Jordan, where you just kind of get bored with what you were doing too. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I power lifted, I did a bunch of other stuff, and like at some point you just kind of want to like explore what else is available.
I think
Yep.
a lot of people I've seen, especially coming into the studio, like they want to like learn something. They don't want to just mindlessly lift a weight or
Yeah.
run on a treadmill. Like they want to explore, do something with their body. So
Yeah, most of the time, it's funny lifting weights. Even for people who enjoy it, can be really boring sometimes, and you do it because of the feeling you like.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
Right.
And that's really why you do it. It's not like an activity that while you're doing it all the time. Sometimes you have good days, but not like on every curl.
yeah,
Like
get the pump.
like, unless bodybuilding something I never really gave a good shot. Maybe I would like that more. But
Yeah, but you told me you looked like a Greek god.
oh,
That
back in
is
the day, back in the day,
Matt's words.
yeah, I did.
But you're saying you.
And that's just not guy in his mid-30s saying it. Like,
Yeah.
I got pictures. So, not
I
some
got
not great
proof.
ones. But
He's talking about the Greek god of gluttony.
Yeah, you didn't say which one.
Yeah.
But so you're saying if you had focused more on like a bodybuilding aspect, it would have looked way more intense.
Probably. I was just doing like
Yeah.
basic crap. But
Basic
like,
crap.
yeah. Anyways, so back to Jordan because that's what we're
Wrestling?
talking to. Yeah. But yeah, we're probably coming up on the end of round 1 here.
I should say probably the last thing on that. Like, what did you find helped you a lot for wrestling as far as strength conditioning, like outside of wrestling?
Yeah, when I think the thing that best highlights it is my freshman year when I first got to college. I never really weightlifted much. I think in high school we just did a bunch of like pull-ups and
Yeah.
like high reps. And then college I was definitely weaker than some of the guys I wrestled. So really just getting in the weight room, and we did a lot of like powerlifting, cleans. I didn't know how to do any of that when I got there, and then I got pretty good at that.
Nice.
Squats, we did some supplemental work.
Was it like a pretty basic program?
I would say like somewhat basic, but our strength and conditioning guy was really good.
That's cool.
he knew what supplemental stuff to throw in for like injury prevention. But yeah, I got much stronger. Then over that summer, I stayed on campus and did the strength and conditioning. I went up 45 pounds in like all my major lifts.
Nice.
Like I got way stronger. And then my sophomore year, I was like,
you were
like who I was freshman year was like a boy compared to who I was sophomore year. My coaches always joked around.
So
Came back a man.
how does that work as far as like gaining strength and size and then wrestling in certain weight categories?
Yeah,
I'm sure that's a weird trade-off.
That's a great juxtaposition,
right?
Yeah.
Like you want to get stronger, but you're like, there's this trade-off. And
yeah, so I was wrestling 133 half of my freshman year, and that was way too hard of a cut. I was cutting from like 160, brutal. And then halfway through, a bunch of us were cutting too much weight, so our coach bumped us up, and then I wrestled 141 for the last half of the season. But by then, I was just like way weaker than other 41 pounders because I was down at 33 half the season.
Because they would probably been like 170 cut down to 140 something maybe.
Some guys don't cut that extreme.
Okay.
Some are like 150 something to 41. But by then, like all my strength was gone, and like I could tell I was having some strength issues against some guys. So then from there, I still wrestled 141 the following year, but it was harder for me to get down because I think I put on a little more muscle. But I still made the weight class.
Nice.
It was just a little more difficult because of the muscle I had put on.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, I think it has to be so important of what you train. Because if you're gaining size, it has to be
plus your genetics
functional.
too, you know, like some guys can lift and get stronger and they don't put a ton of mass on sometimes.
Why do you say genetics? Like, what does that like manifest as?
Just like how you're like...
You're saying like the insertions of like your
even just like
tendons.
how much mass your body puts on, you know, like with lifting.
But that would still
like you can have two guys on the same program and two guys can have radically different
Well, I'm
results.
saying, but that would affect his wrestling still, because if you put on mass and you're
that's
taking
what
on
I'm saying.
size.
I'm agreeing. Okay. I'm saying like, what if you like the person who wrestles and like has to go up 2 weight classes or something just because they put so much mass on?
Oh, right.
I will say when I was weightlifting in the summers, I didn't really care about my weight class. I was like, I'm just doing what I know is good. Like I'm just training.
Yeah.
I was still wrestling like every other day, strength training, getting bigger, feeling good, and then whatever weight I can make, I'll make. But
well, it was interesting because you're saying like you were weak at 141, or you felt you were weak.
My freshman year, I was weak at 41 because I cut down to 133 first.
Oh,
and my weight stayed down there for half the season.
But then the next time when you hit 141 next season, like you were more comfortable?
Then next season, I gained weight. I was walking around like 163.
Okay.
I had put on some size from lifting all summer. I wasn't holding my weight down at like 133 anymore. And then from there, when I cut from 163 to 141, I had way more size and strength.
Do you find people, like, especially who play 141, you found other competitors walking around at like same thing, like 160-ish?
Yeah, I know some guys who walk around 160-ish, some even bigger than me. I was always kind of lean, so for me that was like a hard cut. But I know some guys who started where I did, but they were just fatter. So like the cut was a little easier. It just depends. Some guys will walk around like 155 and cut down. Like it's different for everyone. But you'll find in wrestling, most guys are like 10, 15 plus pounds.
I was just say like there's got to be like a range for it. Yeah. And that's what Ronda Rousey always said. Like, I don't get paid to fight; I get paid to cut weight. You know, it's like for how the difficulty of it. Like, what's the hardest thing?
So, gents, we're coming up here at where we should be stopping. I got one last question for you, Jordan.
Oh my goodness,
we can always break this one into 2. Okay. Most important question of the podcast: who is your anime jiu-jitsu spirit animal?
Oh wow,
animal?
Or actually, I'm just saying like spirit animal is like a colloquial fun term
because we're using wrestling, grappling.
Yeah, your grappling spirit animal.
Wow,
in the anime.
Wait,
anime grappling spirit animal.
Okay, so
wait, you saying an animal, or you're just saying like spirit?
Yeah, I'm saying spirit animal just loosely.
Yeah.
Basically, like who represents me the most out of anime characters?
Yeah, there you go.
Grappling art.
So the reason why I want to say Goku is because I think all of my self-motivation really kind of came from Dragon Ball Z.
Nice.
Growing up, that was one of the first animes I watched, other than like Yu Yu Hakusho, Inuyasha.
That show has probably put more people in gyms than any other show on the planet.
Yu Yu Hakusho?
No, I was saying Dragon Ball Z.
Oh, 100%.
And Goku just like... that made me want to get stronger because I knew if I faced something hard, I would only get stronger. I'm a Saiyan, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't think I actually am the closest to Goku. I'm trying to think of someone.
Well, here, there's 2 ways to think of your spirit animal with this. So you could have one where it's like the qualities you're trying to personify
Yeah.
or trying to like live by. And then there's the one that you're actually like probably the closest to.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's like 2 ways to think
He's
about
about to say One Punch Man.
it.
I just said
Yeah.
one.
So
and
you
that's
try
it.
to use Goku as guidance.
Yes.
Goku's guidance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very carefree guy. Just
Yeah.
like, I'm going out here and I'm just getting better.
Yeah.
Well,
They're not thinking about it too much.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely
love
not thinking.
It's so bad.
I love it. I love it.
Man.
There was the abridged version lately that was they redid some of the bits of like the Boo saga.
Yeah.
And it was like Vegeta giving this huge speech of like why he's like all excited now to fight Goku, and Goku goes like, I don't really care. I'm just here for the fight. And he's like, God, I missed you.
I love Team 4
I
Star.
don't
They're
care.
so
I'm just here for the fight. Like,
That's
I don't care
great.
your motivation.
The one who's the closest to me, or who I'm closest to, man, that's a tough one.
Yeah, Matt, we need to give him some. We should.
I'll
say
come back
thought
part
ahead.
two.
Okay,
with that one.
yeah. Think about that.
Ooh.
Think about that one. I want to say Levi picked Kakashi for himself.
Kakashi.
Oh, that is a good
Yeah.
one.
As
Yeah.
far as like a fighting style is concerned, like I just like that he was always like kind of like he customized the style for a lot of people, but he wasn't like the strongest guy, but
Yeah.
he would just like every single time like sitting. Obviously, he had his his eyes as well that help him out, but it's like just very carefree, relaxed, but just like watching very intently. But then I also thought like I
He's
loved
so cool too, though.
well, he's so
He's
chill.
so cool.
That's why I got his rash guard. Just like
Yeah.
just chill guy and just
Yeah.
relaxed. But then I always loved Eraserhead too.
Yeah,
from My Hero
he's
Academia.
great.
Same
Yep.
thing, relaxed personality, but he's just like very mentally sharp.
Mhm.
That he just watches and analyzes and tries to shut down people's games when he's got the raps and things like that. Like I always loved the one. It was one of my favorite anime scenes was literally that assault for them to grab All Might
Yep.
in that room, and they came in there. All Might isn't there, and there's
Mm.
Eraserhead, and all of a sudden they're like not expecting Eraserhead's like, oh crap, like I gotta hold these
Yeah.
high level guys
Season
off
1.
until all these students, and there he is, like they were like, oh, Eraserhead shouldn't be a problem, and he's like, now he's got these long distance raps
Tenacity.
too. He's like, one guy was like saying something like he basically doesn't have any power, and he's like, you're only a threat to me if you can reach me.
Mm.
Like
That's
I thought
such a
that was
good
so
saying.
cool because it
Yeah.
was like I took that immediately for jiu-jitsu. It's like you're only a threat to me if you can reach me. But it was basically this idea like I'm gonna cut you off way off early.
Mm.
But he had all these like tactics and strategies. So I always liked like that too. So I always like the guys that didn't look physically as intimidating, but they were just like mentally just sharp
Yes.
as all heck. But
Yeah.
what was yours?
I don't know. You picked
I picked Rengoku for Matt
it.
because Matt always goes tasty.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Rengoku's legit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
he's-
there's like this carefree personality, but it's like
And you didn't even finish. He didn't even
No,
finish Mugen Train yet. He didn't even finish
Oh,
Mugen
the
Train.
problem was he was getting his butt whooped. And
Yeah,
I'm
you
like,
missed
I
his
can't
greatest
keep
thing,
doing
though.
this.
Like,
I
I
just
can't.
like
I don't
that-
want to wreck it for you.
I like that one scene that he was just like facing that one guy, and he was like, guy was like gonna kick his butt, and he just did like one technique, like he was done, like whatever that one like sword thing was, he just
Oh,
went
yeah.
right through, and he was like, all right, I'm done.
later.
Yeah, later, just like all set. But
But okay. All right. I think we're definitely gonna have to have a round 2. This is gonna be a 2-parter.
I knew it. Like once Matt was have these questions, I'm like, we're gonna.
Yeah. I
we're gonna
didn't
go
even
with
get
these.
through like half my questions.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. I like it. So Jordan, before we end, if anything else you wanna cover?
No, that's just about it. I think we'll really dive into the nitty gritty of more of the wrestling side of things and like how it kind of changed for me as I got older.
Yeah,
And
that's a good idea.
all the different things I picked up at each age level.
I like it.
In part 2.
I like it.
Nice.
Levi, where can people find you?
Every time. thegrapplingpodcast.com, where it's getting very close for us to like do the animepodcast.com.
Yeah.
What other ones we can
The
do
podcast
too?
podcast.
The podcast.com. It's great because on top of this, I'm sure with many other arts too, it's funny, like we had those new guys the other day that were really into Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, those guys are great.
Right. But I find that there's kind of like like commonalities for people, especially if they're going into grappling or wrestling or actually wrestling, but like any sort of like martial art, that there seems to be crossovers as far as interests are concerned,
Yeah.
of what your brain goes to. So that's why I think it's easy for us to go on these certain tangents. Like it's funny. I can bet 100% that I can see somebody come into the gym and go, oh yeah, sounds like stereotyping. I can tell they'd be into anime or something like that, which, you know, they're not coming in there like all cosplay. I mean, if you come in with a rash guard, you know, that's Dragon Ball Z or something like that. I'm guessing you are too. But
All right. So if you're into nerdy stuff like that, come look us up. Otherwise,
cool. We will see you guys later.
See you guys.